Chapter 3596. They knew that Yi Shiwen's strength was at its limit, but they had no other choice. If they couldn't stop Yi Shiwen, then the consequences would be unimaginable. The combat strength of a peak heavenly venerate was really terrifying. In the Fortune realm, the importance of a heavenly venerate to a tribe or a force was simply unimaginable. It was also because of this that they had no choice but to step forward. Wu Zun, although you are indeed powerful, you are too arrogant, a heavenly master said coldly. If Yi Shiwen had just erupted with such combat power, they wouldn't have dared to say so. But now, Yi Shiwen was obviously an arrow at the end of its flight. His body could explode at any time. It wasn't that he had no chance of winning in this situation. On the contrary, he had a good chance of winning. As long as he could drag it through the most critical moment, Yi Shiwen would be dead. Arrogant? I'm just stating the facts. Yi Shiwen was holding a treasure sword in his hand. It was the treasure sword that killed the heavenly master just now. However, it was just a treasure sword condensed from a group of sword outlaws. It wasn't a real treasure sword. His long hair was draped over his shoulders, and his entire body exuded an indescribable majesty. The more indifferent he was, the more he seemed like a volcano that had yet to erupt. There was a violent power brewing within it that could explode at any time. As soon as Yi Shiwen's voice fell, his figure disappeared from where he was. When he reappeared, he was already in front of an outer domain heavenly master. It was teleportation. In almost an instant, the entire galaxy was destroyed. The extreme brilliance of the starry sky quickly dimmed. At this time, Yi Shiwen had already arrived in front of this heavenly master. However, this heavenly master didn't show any fear on his face. On the contrary, he revealed a sneer as if his plan had succeeded. The moment Yi Shiwen appeared, the other celestial masters also attacked at the same time. They all attacked Yi Shiwen one after another. This was also a tacit understanding that they had formed long ago. With the ability of the heavenly masters, they could naturally form such an alliance without anyone noticing. This attack seemed to put him in a precarious situation, but in fact, it was extremely safe because Yi Shiwen couldn't ignore his own safety and forcefully attack. Yi Shiwen raised his eyebrows. Although he didn't expect these celestial masters to join forces like this level of attack was far worse than when Chaos Overlord had attacked him previously. On the surface of his body, the clothes of destruction emitted waves of destruction that blocked the attacks of the great heavenly venerables. They simply couldn't get within 3 feet of him. It was as if they had smashed into something as hard as steel. Under everyone's gaze, those attacks shattered inch by inch, unable to break through the destructive waves of the clothes of destruction. This was a very special defensive method, using offense as defense. Destroying the opponent's attacks was a form of defense. Only someone like the Chaotic Overlord could directly pass through the waves of destruction and leave a huge mark on the clothes of destruction. Yi Shiwen's movements didn't slow down in the slightest. He fiercely slashed his sword towards that celestial master. That celestial master didn't even dream that Yi Shiwen would be so terrifying. The joint attack of the great heavenly venerables was completely ignored by Yi Shiwen and completely blocked by the clothes of destruction. Although the clothes of destruction was a very rare defensive celestial master Dao artifact, only Yi Shiwen could make the clothes of destruction perform to such an extent. The sword light trembled and poured down like a Milky Way waterfall. In an instant, it had already reached the body of that celestial master. The celestial master had almost no strength to fight back. The defensive boundary and array on his body had already disappeared the moment it rose up. Then he was smashed by the sword, and his body exploded on the spot. His spirit was also destroyed in an instant. He didn't have the strength to fight back at all. There were countless unwillingness in his heart. There were countless things that he wanted to do. However, he still ushered in the final moments of his life here. No matter how many powerful enemies he had killed in the past, he was no different from those people in front of Yi Shiwen at this moment. With one sword, another celestial master was killed. Although the celestial master had the weakest cultivation among these celestial masters, he was only a fifth-realm celestial master. Even Yi Shiwen's main body could easily defeat him, let alone now that he had such amazing strength. Such a scene was very shocking, but for the outer domain, this was an unacceptable loss. After all, every celestial master was unique. Every celestial master had their own glorious and resplendent legends. They were also the true core and pillar of a top clan in the outer domain. In the past, experts of this level had fallen before. However, compared to the one in front of them, they were undoubtedly insignificant. There was no struggle or bloody battle. Previously, when they fought against the Chaos Overlord, they had all gone through bloody battles. In particular, Yi Shiwen's body was full of dense cracks, and a lot of blood had flowed out. It was not like now, where he could kill a celestial master with just one move. This kind of creativity and strength was really too shocking. Impossible. How can this be? How can our clan's old ancestor die like this? No, this is fake. Impossible. Our clan's old ancestor. How can this person be so terrifying? Even if he is not in his peak state, I'm afraid he is invincible just by relying on his own strength. After killing another celestial master with one sword, Yi Shiwen's expression was as usual, as if he had just casually stepped on an ant on the roadside. He was not moved at all. He walked in the starry sky and directly killed the few celestial masters who had revealed themselves. They had already exposed their positions when they attacked Yi Shiwen. However, they hadn't expected that Yi Shiwen would deal with the celestial master so quickly that they didn't even have the chance to react or change their positions. At this time, Yi Shiwen's eyes seemed to be able to see through thousands of voids. Everything was imprinted in his eyes. He could see the appearance of the celestial masters behind the layers of space. When the celestial masters saw Yi Shiwen's gaze, they suddenly felt a chill on their backs. The action just now was really too shocking. One person and one sword dared to attack the countless troops of the Outer Domain Coalition army. This person was not crazy, but he had absolute confidence. Those celestial masters hurriedly avoided the endless space. They only felt that the space in front of them was not reliable. Yi Shiwen's gaze could actually penetrate the layers of void. They were afraid that he could also deal with existences like them. Let's join forces and kill him. I don't believe that he can persist for long alone. At this time, some people clearly saw some dense cracks on Yi Shiwen's body. The move just now seemed to be infinitely powerful, but because of this, it also consumed a lot of energy. Whether it was in terms of spiritual power or physical strength, it was an irreversible trend. Even the celestial masters like them could not avoid this trend. This was an opportunity for all of them. Kill me? A cold smile flashed across Yi Shiwen's mouth, and then his whole body was emitting golden light. The golden light was dazzling, as if he was a god cast in gold. At this time, Yi Shiwen moved. He clenched his 5 fingers into a fist, and golden light spread out from the gaps of his fingers, evolving into a world pattern, and blasted out a punch. The world seemed to be inverted, and the 6 paths of reincarnation emerged, sending all living beings to reincarnation. Just one punch made these celestial masters feel a huge sense of oppression. It was not simply targeted at any one of them, but at all the celestial masters at the same time. Several celestial masters joined forces and could not withstand the weight of this punch, let alone the foreign allied forces. Although they were the elites among the elites, they were still crushed by this coercion and knelt in the sky, shivering. Kill. Having been forced to this point, these celestial masters began to roar, and their hands also launched terrifying celestial master attacks, crushing towards Yi Shiwen. Such an attack was earth-shattering, and it was extremely terrifying. It was a pity that such an attack was futile in front of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's 6 paths of reincarnation fist suppressed all their resistance. The entire universe was in a riot. Countless essences swept out in a frenzy like a turbulent tide. Thump, thump, thump. Under the coercion of Yi Shiwen's punch, these celestial masters retreated again and again, unable to resist at all. In the face of Yi Shiwen's offensive, they could only retreat in defeat, desperately defending. They just wanted to buy time, to delay until Yi Shiwen died. But how could Yi Shiwen give them any more time? From his body, a golden light flew out, turning into a seal that rotated above Yi Shiwen's head. It was the Martial Master Seal. Suddenly, the Martial Master Seal began to blossom with the divine brilliance of the nomological laws, scattering like rain. Then began to expand with the wind, growing bigger and bigger. In just a moment, it became as huge as a mountain, smashing towards one of the Celestial Masters. Bang! This Celestial Master screamed, and his body was smashed into pieces. He could not resist at all. Although they were both heavenly venerates, the disparity between them was like the difference between heaven and earth. In particular, the Martial Supreme Seal, which had been integrated with the Chi of Merit, was already a peak heavenly venerate Tao artifact. It was also one of the most powerful heavenly venerate Tao artifacts. How could this celestial master resist? In just an instant, he died tragically. The other celestial masters wanted to help, but they were suppressed by Yi Shiwen with one hand and blocked with another. They could not go forward at all, and on the contrary, they were constantly being defeated. The gap between the strength of the two sides was despairing. Chapter 35:97. Yi Shiwen had forced these heavenly venerables to retreat with just one hand. This complete suppression made these heavenly venerables feel a sense of despair rising from the bottom of their hearts. The fear in their hearts climbed infinitely and occupied their entire bodies. They were extremely terrified. All of this took a long time to describe, but in fact, it had happened in just a short period of time. Everything that happened made these heavenly venerables feel like they were in a dream. Even the Eastern Region Coalition Army of the Fortune God Dynasty looked at Yi Shiwen in shock. They only felt that it was completely unbelievable. There was a gap between heavenly venerables, and there was no doubt that Yi Shiwen was in his peak state right now. Invincible. Several heavenly venerables were beaten back again and again, vomiting blood. Some even began to have cracks on their bodies, just like Yi Shiwen. It was just that Yi Shiwen was being torn apart by the power of the supreme ancestral symbol, while they were being suppressed by Yi Shiwen's powerful strength. He had even injured his origin. He had achieved such a feat with his own strength. After this battle, the name of Wu Zun would spread throughout the entire Fortune God realm. Kill! A powerful foreign heavenly venerable roared. He propped up a treasured cauldron, which emitted golden light that filled the sky and directly counterattacked Yi Shiwen. This treasured cauldron suppressed the void, and in the next instant, it was in front of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen did not evade the suppression of this treasure cauldron. With a roar, he stepped forward, clenched his hand into a fist, and punched out, bombarding the treasured cauldron on the spot. Clang! There was a sound like metal clashing. Yi Shiwen blocked the treasured cauldron with his bare hands, and his fist blasted a huge fist mark on the treasure cauldron. Just like how the Chaos Overlord was able to leave a mark on Yi Shiwen's clothes of destruction, Yi Shiwen was also in a berserk and invincible state at this time. He was actually able to leave his own law mark on a celestial master Taoist tool. Thump, thump, thump. The foreign heavenly venerable retreated again and again. The terrifying power from the treasure cauldron made his whole body tremble. At the same time, Yi Shiwen clenched his fist again and punched out. The spiritual energy between heaven and earth boiled, and the entire starry sky collapsed. Then he instantly punched out. Boom! Yi Shiwen's fist pierced through the treasure cauldron, and his entire arm passed through it. Pooh! The outer realm celestial coughed up a mouthful of blood, and his face turned pale, as if all the blood in his body had been sucked dry. The treasure cauldron was instantly severely damaged, and the heavenly venerate from the outer domain, who was connected to the treasure cauldron, was also severely injured. This was the formidable strength of his gilded tyrant body, combined with his monstrous and invincible magical power. Destroying an Empyrean Tao artifact barehandedly, this was practically something that only existed in legends. It was unimaginable. The Empyrean was sent flying backwards at a speed faster than when he had arrived. But how could Yi Shiwen give him the opportunity to escape? The pores of his entire body spewed out sword energy, condensing into a giant sword above his head. Then, the giant sword fiercely fell down. Bang! The heavens and earth shook violently, as though a volcano was about to erupt. The sword light slashed down on the body of the celestial lord, causing him to be torn into pieces. Even his primordial spirit was destroyed in an instant. At this time, Yi Shiwen's sword ki was too cruel. It was like a scorching sun, and it had evaporated the soul. Another heavenly venerate was killed. Yi Shiwen had just killed a heavenly venerate, and his speed was even faster. The cracks on his body were gradually expanding, and there was not much time left for him. Seeing Yi Shiwen directly kill them, the remaining heavenly venerates were even more terrified. It was not that they had never encountered an incomparably powerful master, but they had never encountered someone who could kill a heavenly venerate so easily. In the other outer realm, heavenly venerates finally could not sit still at this time. One after another, they wanted to leave their own battlefield and come to support. They all felt an extreme sense of threat from Yi Shiwen, and this Yi Shiwen would not last long. In this case, they could eradicate a great enemy. Moreover, if they allowed him to continue killing like this, the entire Outer Realm army would collapse. However, since they could see this, the Eastern region Heavenly Venerables could also see it. Everyone could see that the real outcome of this battle rested on Yi Shiwen. No matter what kind of thoughts they had about Yi Shiwen, they had to do their best to stop the opponent in front of them so that they could not support them. There were too many things to decide in this battle, and the Fortune God Dynasty's army was also about to return. If they made a mistake here, they were afraid that the Fortune God Dynasty would not let them off easily. Just as they tried to struggle and break free from the entanglement of their original opponents, Yi Shiwen had already killed another 2 heavenly venerates. His speed was too fast. The more time passed, the more serious Yi Shiwen's injuries were, and the faster his attacks were. At this time, there were only 3 heavenly venerates left. These 3 heavenly venerates did not escape because they had been forced into a dead end. At the same time, they also understood that if they did not join forces, they would only be defeated by Yi Shiwen one by one and die faster. The entire world was boiling, and the 3 heavenly venerates were crazy. Such a battle was beyond the imagination of the world. The sky fell, the earth cracked, the mountains shook, and the wild waves spread far and wide, annihilating the stars in the distance. Wherever the aftermath of the battle between the 2 sides passed, everything was destroyed, leaving only a pitch-black black hole from which chaos poured out. The 3 heavenly venerates joined forces, causing Yi Shiwen's movements to slow down slightly. Among them, there was even a high-level 7th realm heavenly venerate who could resist Yi Shiwen for a while. With him as the core, they actually managed to hold Yi Shiwen back. They could only hold Yi Shiwen back and could not resist him. But even so, for the 3 heavenly venerates, it was already a pleasant surprise. Bang! 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 A series of sounds erupted. Yi Shiwen wielded the long sword in his hand, displaying the might of a long blade. Every slash caused the world to tremble. The 3 heavenly venerates did their best to join forces, but they could only delay for time. But every slash had the power to destroy heaven and earth, and most of them were blocked by the high-level 7th realm heavenly venerate who was at the forefront. His face became increasingly pale, and in front of him, the cracks on Yi Shiwen's body were getting bigger, but his expression became more indifferent without the slightest change. Roar! Yi Shiwen let out a long roar, and all the spiritual energy in the world was absorbed into his body to replenish the spiritual power that he had consumed. The spiritual power in his body exploded, and suddenly, a large expanse of divine light erupted, turning into a terrifying sword light that slashed down. Puff! This foreign high-level heavenly master of the 7th realm had finally reached the limit of what he could withstand. The enchantment that he had created with his hands was smashed into pieces by Yi Shiwen's sword light. Then, Yi Shiwen's sword light fell directly and chased after him. The foreign high-level heavenly master was cut in half on the spot. The high-level heavenly venerate screamed and was beheaded alive, and he was already the one who could resist the longest. The remaining two heavenly venerates flew out at the same time, spurting a mouthful of blood. Yishuan's attack was too heavy, and they could only stall for time by joining forces. But at the same time, because they joined forces, their injuries were shared equally. Before they could react and organize a counterattack, one of the heavenly venerates saw that Yishuan had already appeared in front of him, and a long sword in his hand swept across the sky. The heavenly venerate's head, which was like a ferocious bird, was suddenly cut off, and blood spurted out. The golden blood scattered like rain and fell on the eastern region like a heavy downpour. Before his body could fall, he was grabbed by Yishuan. The bodies of these heavenly venerates were very important to Yishuan, and they were poured into the world tree, waiting for the world tree to take shape. At this time, there were originally several heavenly venerates in the entire field, but now there was only one left. Not only was that heavenly venerate terrified, but even his face revealed an extremely horrified expression. He was frightened by Yishuan. The heavenly venerate's blood splattered on Yishuan's body, dripping drop by drop along his clothes of destruction. From the front, he looked like a demon that had crawled out of hell. Wu Zun, you have killed so many heavenly venerates from the eastern region. From now on, you will be the mortal enemy of the eastern region. We will not let you off. You can't stay in your current state for long, and you will definitely be severely injured. When that time comes, not only you, but your entire human race will also be annihilated. The heavenly venerate forcefully mustered up his courage and said. Yishuan sneered. The heavenly venerate probably never expected that his words would not only fail to frighten Yishuan, but on the contrary, aroused a murderous intent in Yishuan's heart. Yishuan saw that many heavenly venerates around him were about to break free from the entanglement and come to support him. He knew that he did not have much time left. His heavy breathing indicated that his body could not hold on any longer. Roar! Yishuan roared, and the divine radiance around him was like rain. The light rain was so dazzling that it was difficult to look at it directly. He finally moved again. Fast, fast, fast. His speed was so fast that it surpassed the speed of light and also the long river of time. In an instant, he had already arrived in front of the heavenly venerate. The heavenly venerate was completely mad. He knew that this was the last moment. If he could hold on, Yishuan would collapse, but if he couldn't, he would die. Bursts of light burst out from his body. Then, endless power erupted and attacked Yishuan. However, how could he resist Yishuan? It was just a punch, and all of them collapsed like a dream. When these attacks were smashed, Yishuan's fists splattered with blood. His body was almost unable to hold on any longer. But even so, this punch instantly smashed the head of the heavenly venerate from the outer domain and penetrated it. He died instantly. Chapter 3598. At this point, the few celestial masters in front of Yishuan had been slaughtered by Yishuan. At this point, the gap between the celestial masters in the eastern region had been completely wiped out by Yishuan. It should be said that Yishuan had slaughtered all of them. He actually succeeded. Many celestial masters from various regions who were watching the battle from afar, some were having affairs, and some were from the Fortune God dynasty. At this time, they were immersed in endless shock. They were simply like statues, frozen. This is simply a miracle. Just today's battle is enough to make his fierce name known for thousands of generations. It's over. The coalition army of the Stormy Sea region is finished. It's almost finished in the hands of one person. After killing the Chaos Overlord, he actually still has such an ability. It's simply a miracle, incredible. If we can't kill him in this battle, I'm afraid it will be very difficult to kill him, unless the Chaos Overlord can personally come out and kill Yishuan. At this time, Yishuan's body was already covered in blood. His breathing had begun to become completely uneven. He had reached the limit of his state. It could be said that the current Yi Shiwen had reached the most dangerous state. However, in the eyes of the armies of both sides, Yi Shiwen was the most dangerous person in the world. Even now, the power of killing celestial masters in one breath still left a lingering fear in everyone's hearts. They only felt that their hearts were trembling. Many people's bodies were stiff. They wanted to escape, but there was no way. It was as if they had been immobilized. At this time, Yi Shiwen finally moved. He even felt that his thoughts had begun to blur. This was almost impossible for someone like him who had cultivated to this level. It could be seen from this that his body's current state could be seen. There was not much time left for him. Fortunately, he had killed all the celestial masters who wanted to get in the way. As soon as he moved, in an instant, the sky and earth changed color. The wind and clouds changed, and thunder and lightning broke out again. Under the control of the law of thunder and lightning, the sea of thunder and lightning flooded. The foreign coalition army that was included in the sea of thunder and lightning were swept away in an instant. They could not resist at all. Wherever he went, a sea of thunder and lightning would flood. His area of effect attack was truly terrifying. Some sovereign emperors seemed to have rushed to Yi Shiwen's surroundings and wanted to launch a surprise attack on him. Yi Shiwen's current state was really not good. This was something that everyone could see. Perhaps he could perform a miracle that ordinary people could not achieve. However, they were still too naive. They couldn't contend against Yi Shiwen even if he was in his weakest state. Around his body, the lightning energy rapidly changed, transforming into the azure dragon, the vermilion bird, the black tortoise, and the white tiger. They guarded the four directions, and Yi Shiwen was the only celestial emperor in the world, controlling the great Tao of the world. These sovereign emperors hadn't even gotten close to Yi Shiwen when they were killed by the four-sided mythological beasts formed by the power of thunder. They became the food of these four-sided mythological beasts. Wherever he passed, he was like a celestial emperor patrolling the world, destroying all evil. No one could stop his footsteps. Millions, tens of millions of foreign troops died tragically in his sea of lightning. Finally, the foreign troops that had persisted until now couldn't hold on anymore and completely collapsed because they didn't have the slightest chance of winning, and they couldn't see the slightest hope. The celestial lords were easily killed in front of him one by one, and they were no different from ants in Yi Shiwen's eyes. Millions of them died. In such a situation where there was only death and no chance of winning, even the most resolute people couldn't hold on. Soon, the first people began to flee, and the appearance of the first person to flee was like the collapse of a domino card, bringing about a series of reactions. One person ran away, 10 people ran away, 100 people ran away, 1,000 people ran away, 10,000 people ran away, 100,000 people ran away, 1,000,000 people ran away. The neat and tidy army that was advancing forward had been defeated in an instant. Or it could be said that they had been frightened by Yi Shiwen and had been defeated by him alone. They collapsed one after another. As the saying goes, a defeated army is like a landslide. No matter how many emperors shouted and tried to control the momentum of the defeated army, it was in vain. Even at this time, the army that was in a killing frenzy and only wanted to escape rushed towards the foreign emperors who wanted to control the situation. One or two might not be of much use, but once there were millions or even tens of millions of them, this flood was enough to drown any powerful enemy. No one could stop this tide. Even heavenly venerables would be drowned, let alone emperors. And these emperors who reacted quickly followed and fled for their lives, while those who reacted slowly were completely drowned. What kind of terrifying, crazy tide was this? What order, what discipline, what respect for the strong, all became bullshit and were instantly forgotten. And when the foreign heavenly venerables who were entangled with the fortune god dynasties, heavenly venerables saw this scene, they only felt disbelief, as if they had seen the most incredible miracle in the world. The army that was valiant and high-spirited before had now completely collapsed. Perhaps even they had encountered such a situation for the first time. Those who could be brought to conquer the eastern region were the best of the best in the Stormy Sea region, the elite of the elite army. It was almost impossible for the camp to collapse. And now, this scene had appeared in front of them. It was not because of the Eastern Region Coalition Army that they had collapsed, but because of Yi Shiwen alone. Hundreds of millions of troops could not stop his footsteps. He killed many heavenly venerables, and even the Chaos Overlord, the pillar of the foreign heavenly venerables, died tragically in his hands. These many factors added together were the root cause of the defeat of the foreign heavenly venerables. Kill! Yi Shiwen roared and did not give up. He directly chased after them, and with a wave of his hand, hundreds of thousands of elite troops were completely annihilated under this palm. This time, the foreign heavenly venerables were even more afraid. They no longer had the slightest intention to resist. What courage, what bravery, what ferocity, all had disappeared completely. All that could make them stop and resist had disappeared without a trace. All of a sudden, the speed of their escape became faster. In a short time, there were countless casualties. They were not killed by Yi Shiwen or the Eastern Region Coalition Army, but were completely seeking their own deaths. Many trampled each other to death. Although the entire sky was very large, when the army that wanted to escape numbered in the hundreds of millions, the entire sky was blocked. The ones at the back had to escape faster than the ones at the front, and the ones at the front had to escape faster than the ones at the front. It was almost a one-sided defeat, and the elite troops of the Eastern Region Coalition Army were also instantly stunned. They did not expect that the foreign heavenly venerables, who were able to fight with the Eastern Region Coalition Army and even had the upper hand, would collapse just like that. They were defeated all the way, chased by Yi Shiwen all the way, and fled frantically like a group of sheep being chased by a tiger. From the looks of it, it was obvious that it was not a feigned defeat. They had been defeated to such an extent, it could not be a feigned defeat at all. Even if there was such a plan, it could not be organized under the circumstances where the army had collapsed. Their reaction was also very fast, and they immediately organized the army to rush over. If they were to chase after them now, it would just be like beating a dog while it was down. It was no longer the army that could kill on par with them. For a time, there was another frenzy. The morale of the Eastern Region Coalition Army was like a rainbow, and they directly chased after them. They did not need to waste any effort at all, and they could chase after them. It's over, it's over. The Stormy Sea region is finished. In the distance, a celestial master muttered to himself. Seeing this scene, he had completely understood that the Stormy Sea region had no chance to turn things around this time. This time, under the pursuit of the Eastern region's great army, it would be considered good if more than half of them managed to escape. It could be said that the Stormy Sea region's vitality suffered a great loss this time. It could be said that the benefits they had plundered from the Fortune Divine Dynasty when they were caught unprepared had all been lost in this battle. No matter how much wealth they plundered, it could not stop such a great loss of vitality. It was conceivable that after this battle, both sides would suffer a great loss of vitality, and it would no longer be possible to attack each other like before the war. There would be friction, and a great war could break out at any time. After this battle, both sides would need a long time to recover their vitality. It was originally a battle where the foreign heavenly venerables had an advantage, but in the end, it turned into such a situation, and all this was attributed to Yi Shiwen, the person who changed the battle single-handedly. After this battle, even the creatures in the most remote places of the foreign heavenly venerables would have heard of this name. This battle had become the battle that truly made him famous. There were many old monsters who had been famous for God, knows how many years, and even veteran celestial masters had become his foils in this battle. If the battlefield at this time was a painting, then Yi Shiwen would undoubtedly be the center of the entire painting, while the others, including the famous celestial masters, Xianyuan Tianzuan, and the heavenly Dao Sex patriarch, had all become the green leaves that serve as a foil to the red flower. He alone shined brightly, and no one could take away his glory. At this time, Yi Shiwen did not continue to chase. He was panting heavily. This battle had overdrawn all of his vitality. There was no way for him to chase any further. This battle, up to this point, he had used up all of his strength. The moment he ran out of energy, Xianyuan Tianzuan had already appeared by his side, protecting him from the outside world's Tianzuan, afraid that another Tianzuan would make a move. Just as Xianyuan Tianzuan arrived at Yi Shiwen's side, sure enough, a few divine senses swept over, and even a few attacks swept over. All of them were blocked by Xianyuan Tianzuan. Seeing this situation, the foreign heavenly venerables finally stopped. But everyone understood this battle was over. Yi Shiwen alone defeated the foreign heavenly venerables' allied forces. Chapter 35:99. Yi Shiwen once again suppressed the supreme ancestral symbol in his body, but he only felt dizzy. Endless pain suddenly rushed into his mind, almost squeezing his brain to the point of bursting. There was not a single part of his body that did not hurt, and many places were left with permanent injuries. Otherwise, with the regenerative ability of a heavenly master and the golden tyrant form, how could he be afraid of using the supreme ancestral symbol? These permanent injuries could not be healed at all and could only be healed bit by bit. And this process would take an unknown amount of time. If he had not been forced into a corner, he would not have chosen to use the supreme ancestral symbol. This was a trump card and could not be used at any time. Every time it was used, it could be fatal. If the primal chaos overlord was just a bit stronger, the one who fell this time might not have been the primal chaos overlord, but him. Fortunately, his cultivation had improved during this time, reaching the peak of the 6th realm. If he had used the supreme ancestral symbol with the same cultivation as when he fought against the Moon City Lord, he would most likely have died at the hands of the primal chaos overlord. In terms of sharpness of attack, the primal chaos overlord was even stronger than the Moon City Lord. The progress he had made during this time was reflected vividly at this time. But even so, his current situation was extremely bad. If not for the protection of Xianyuan Tianzuan, he would have been killed by those heavenly masters who were eyeing him covetously. The strategy of those foreign heavenly masters was not wrong. As long as they could stall for time, they would be able to kill Yi Shiwen. But the problem was that they had underestimated their own strength and also underestimated Yi Shiwen's strength. And the price they paid for this was their own lives. Thank you for your help, friend. Yi Shiwen cupped his hands. There were all kinds of cracks on the surface of his body. From afar, it was extremely frightening, but in the end, he still held on. No worries, it was just a small effort on my part. Today, we were able to defeat the foreign allied forces and drive them away. And you are the main contributor. Xianyuan Tianzuan looked at Yi Shiwen, his eyes incomparably complicated. No matter what means Yi Shiwen had used, he indeed possessed the ability to stand shoulder to shoulder with Yi Shiwen. From now on, Yi Shiwen's status wouldn't be lower than Yi Shiwen's. After this battle, Yi Shiwen would already have half of the position of Eastern Celestial Lord. What he said was also from the bottom of his heart. With his cultivation and status, he naturally didn't need to curry favor with Yi Shiwen. These were also the words in his heart. Yi Shiwen's performance was indeed amazing. Originally, the other side had one more peak celestial master than their side. It was an absolutely dangerous thing. The whole situation was very unfavorable for the eastern region. However, Yi Shiwen had reversed such a disadvantageous situation with his own strength. Moreover, he had completely transformed the advantage into a hearty victory. He had completely laid the foundation for the eastern region's victory. Now, under the leadership of the Heavenly School's hierarch, the eastern region's army had launched a ruthless pursuit of the foreign army. Although they could also reap a lot of benefits, Yi Shiwen was the one who had taken the most credit. After this battle, the rumors about Yi Shiwen's candidacy for the position of Eastern Celestial Lord would dissipate. Yi Shiwen wasn't bad in terms of strength or contributions. Moreover, his lack of qualifications was a joke at this time. No one would care about it anymore. I'll just do my best, Yi Shiwen said with a grin. He had only affected the injuries all over his body. Hundreds of millions of kinds of pain erupted in an instant. Even with his calmness and mental cultivation, the pain still made him grimace in pain. Before, when he was fighting with all his strength, his mind was in an extremely calm state, so he didn't notice it. But now, all the negative effects had erupted. What a good do my best, This do my best is something that many people can't do. Xianyuan Tianzuan said. In this battle, I also have a lot of things that I would like to ask fellow Taoists. During this period of time, would it be okay for me to visit fellow Taoist in the divine court? Since fellow Taoist is willing to come, the entire human race will naturally welcome you with open arms. Yi Shiwen hurriedly said, feeling a bit grateful in his heart, because he knew very well that Xianyuan Tianzuan saying that he would ask for Yi Shiwen's help was actually just an excuse. The real reason was because he wanted to protect Yi Shiwen, who was in his weakest state ever. Right now, although Yi Shiwen could still maintain the battle prowess of a heavenly master, he was already at the bottom of the heavenly masters. Any heavenly master could easily kill him. Xianyuan Tianzuan was showing his stance, protecting him. If anyone dared to attack Yi Shiwen at this time, they would be going against Xianyuan Tianzuan, who could withstand the anger of a peak heavenly master. Although Xianyuan Tianzuan and Yi Shiwen haven't known each other for a long time, and they haven't met many times, but Xianyuan Tianzuan has indeed helped Yi Shiwen many times. Not everyone is like some heavenly masters who hate Yi Shiwen to the bone. That's fine. I'll stay with your human race for a while. I don't have anywhere else to go anyway. Xianyuan Tianzuan saw that Yi Shiwen understood and couldn't help but smile. He was a free and easy person and couldn't stand those dirty things. If he wasn't there to protect Yi Shiwen, there might really be some people who would risk universal condemnation to kill Yi Shiwen. Right now, there were many people who were grateful to Yi Shiwen, but there were also quite a few who wished that Yi Shiwen would die without a grave. Normally, they were afraid of Yi Shiwen's strength and didn't dare to come out, but now they didn't have such concerns. Right now, Yi Shiwen was in his weakest state ever, so it was a good opportunity for them to act. Aside from these people who were secretly trying to kill Yi Shiwen, in his opinion, the bigger problem was still the outer domain. With so many heavenly masters in the outer domain, there was no guarantee that some of them wouldn't sneak into the eastern domain to kill Yi Shiwen. If such a day really came, Yi Shiwen would definitely die. Yi Shiwen's temperament was also to his liking, so he wanted to protect him. The conversation between Xianyuan Tianzuan and Yi Shiwen was not hidden from anyone, so the heavenly masters who were paying attention to this side also knew Xianyuan Tianzuan's attitude. Many people were indeed tempted to act against Yi Shiwen, but now they probably didn't have the courage to do so. Moreover, they didn't dare to show any hostility, hiding it very deeply. As long as Yi Shiwen could endure this, there was a high possibility that the position of Eastern Heavenly Master would fall into his hands in the future. Offending a future Eastern Heavenly Master, no matter how one looked at it, was not a good thing. Feeling that the surrounding probing gazes had disappeared, Yi Shiwen glanced at Xianyuan Tianzuan, and the two of them took a step forward, leaping towards the direction of the human race's divine palace. The unprecedented war between the Eastern Domain and the Stormy Sea region had finally come to an end. The outcome of this war was not unexpected. With the strength of the Fortune God dynasty and the Outer Domain, it was normal to see who won and who lost. The gap between the two sides wasn't that big. However, what was truly beyond everyone's expectations was Yi Shiwen. From the moment he had appeared out of nowhere, he had shown brilliantly. He had single-handedly destroyed the entire Stormy Sea area. A single person slaughtering a heavenly master from the Outer Domain was enough to shock the world. The entire Outer Domain's army could be said to have been destroyed by him alone. He single-handedly broke the siege of the Eastern Heavenly Master Mansion and single-handedly gathered the Eastern Domain's army to confront the Outer Domain's army. In the end, he single-handedly killed a number of Heavenly Masters, causing the Outer Domain's allied army to collapse. In this war, his light shone brightly in the world, and no one could take away the light that belonged to him. After this war, whether they were willing or not, people could only classify him as a peak heavenly master. Since ancient times, there had been many heavenly masters, but those who could stand in that position were few and far between. Especially those who could be recognized by the public. It was even more pitiful. And this war made Yi Shiwen's reputation soar in the Eastern Domain. It could be said that with the Eastern Heavenly Master stepping down and becoming a Middle Heavenly Master, there was no one in the Eastern Domain who could be compared to Yi Shiwen. Just the fact that he had saved the eastern region was enough for him to become a myth and legend for countless people in the eastern region for countless years. His legend would be passed down to future generations, and he would become a legend that would never fade with time. This battle was earth-shattering. It had completely changed the structure of the Eastern Domain. Some of the forces that had been dominating the Eastern Domain had been swept clean in this battle. At least half of the Eastern Domain's territory had been emptied, and these territories were quickly divided up by the veteran Heavenly Venerables. No matter what kind of rumors, in the end, the name Wu Zun could not escape. During this period of time, he was the center of countless legends. Soon, such a battle record spread from the Eastern Domain to the other domains, and the legend of Yi Shiwen also spread in each domain. Many people were depressed in their hearts. How could there not be such a person in their domain who could turn the tide at the most critical time and save the people of the domain? This also made Yi Shiwen's name spread throughout the entire 5 domains of the Fortune God dynasty. Although Yi Shiwen also had a big reputation before, it was concentrated among the heavenly masters and emperor lords, and the lower-level creatures had not heard of Yi Shiwen's name. This was because the territory of the Fortune Divine Dynasty was too vast. Other than heavenly venerables who could easily cross large regions, even emperors would find it difficult to cross large regions, not to mention those quasi-emperors and god-kings. Without the transmission arrays, it would be difficult for them to leave the large regions they were in, and the time required to do so was too long. Now, with the spread of this war, Yi Shiwen's name as Wu Zun shook the world, and he could be mentioned in the same breath as the original 4 heavenly masters of the Eastern, Southern, Western, and space-time heavenly masters. And just as this legend became more and more intense, the army of the Fortune God dynasty finally rushed back. Once this news spread, it immediately overshadowed many of the original legends about Yi Shiwen. Compared to Yi Shiwen, the return of the Fortune God dynasty's army was obviously more impactful. Chapter 3600. The Fortune God dynasty's army had finally returned. Countless people in the Fortune God dynasty had been waiting day and night for this scene to finally happen. Ever since the foreign domains invaded, the Fortune God dynasty's army had been forced to retreat, and all the major forces had been uprooted. Even those colossal existences with imperial monarchs that were known as immortal inheritances were being uprooted one after another without being able to fight back at all. Facing such a scene, it was as if the end of the world had come. Everyone had been waiting for the Fortune God dynasty's army to return. In the beginning, they didn't think much of it. As long as the Fortune God dynasty's army returned, it would only be a matter of time before they recaptured their lost territories and drove the foreign domains out. But soon, a rumor began to spread. The Fortune God dynasty's army had been annihilated in the hands of the Devil Dao era. The crux of the matter was that these rumors had spread throughout the entire Fortune Divine Dynasty in a single night, becoming more and more intense. It was impossible to extinguish them. Moreover, the details of the Fortune Divine Dynasty's army's annihilation could stand up to scrutiny, and it was very likely that it had happened. In addition, the Fortune God dynasty's higher-ups did not come forward to refute these rumors. Thus, many people believed this rumor from the bottom of their hearts. Then, the entire Fortune God dynasty's army retreated in defeat. Many people lamented. Was the Fortune God dynasty, which had been established for countless years, really going to fall? Many people might have complained about the Fortune God dynasty on normal days, but at this time, they understood the significance of the Fortune God dynasty to the entire Fortune world. Just when everyone was feeling hopeless, Yi Shiwen appeared out of nowhere. He defeated the several great heavenly venerables who had besieged the Eastern heavenly venerables by himself. When he returned, he brought back a piece of news. The Fortune God dynasty's army hadn't left the world yet. It would just take some time before they could completely retreat. Hearing Yi Shiwen's words, many people felt a lot more at ease. Even though many people were still skeptical about Yi Shiwen's words, they still felt that since the Fortune God dynasty's army was fine, why didn't they return together with them? Therefore, Many people held a reserved attitude until Yi Shiwen led the eastern region and defeated the army of the Stormy Sea area. Only then did many people feel hopeful. Right at this time, the Fortune God dynasty's return spread like wildfire throughout the entire Fortune God dynasty. Countless people who had been waiting for the Fortune God dynasty's return for a long time rushed to spread the news, crying tears of joy. The Fortune God dynasty's army had returned. This news was akin to a sea-stabilizing needle, stabilizing the hearts of the Fortune God dynasty's people. Many people who had been itching to make a move immediately stopped, not daring to stand in the way of this great momentum. Like a mantis trying to stop a chariot, they were like mantises trying to stop a chariot. The Fortune God dynasty's army had returned, and the Fortune God dynasty was about to recapture their lost territories. This became the belief of many. When the Fortune Divine dynasty's army returned, they did not fail to live up to everyone's expectations. The moment they returned, they immediately organized their armies to launch a counterattack. Initially, the Fortune God dynasty's elite army had been taken away by the Middle Heavenly Venerables, but now that they had returned, it was only natural for them to launch a counterattack. With the Fortune God dynasty's elite army strength, they joined the crusade and defeated the Foreign Domains army in an instant. The Foreign Domains army was not as organized as the Fortune God dynasty's army. The reason they were able to sweep the Foreign Domains army was largely due to the Fortune God dynasty's elite army being transferred away. On top of that, they were like a group of dragons without a leader. But now, with the return of the Expeditionary Army, these problems have been solved. Facing the Foreign Domains allied army, they were no longer at a disadvantage. In fact, they even had the upper hand. With the return of the Middle Heavenly Venerables, the Central Region's forces were mobilized to support the other regions. A considerable portion of the Fortune God dynasty's army that had returned from the Eastern region was also sent to other regions to provide support. Because the Eastern region's war had ended early, the Fortune God dynasty's army had been driven out of the Stormy Sea region's army without needing to be mobilized. Moreover, in the pursuit of the Stormy Sea region's army, nearly half of the Stormy Sea region's army had been killed. The Stormy Sea region's vitality had been greatly damaged, and many tribes had been exterminated. Therefore, as long as a portion of the army was left behind to guard the Stormy Sea region's army, it would be fine. With the addition of fresh troops, the situation on the battlefield that had been in a stalemate was reversed. The Fortune Divine dynasty's main battlefield had fully displayed its advantage, and the foreign allied forces were forced to retreat again and again. Soon, they had the upper hand on the entire battlefield. Especially after the Southern Heavenly Venerables, Western Heavenly Venerables, and the others joined in, the overall situation became very clear. Even among the peak Heavenly Venerables, the Fortune God dynasty's Heavenly Venerables were still the top few. Under this crazy counterattack, the Foreign Domains allied army retreated as quickly as they came. In less than a year, they had been driven out of the Fortune God dynasty's territory. This time, the Fortune God dynasty also suffered heavy losses. They lost more than one-third of their elite army in the Battle of Moon City, which was already a huge blow to their vitality. In addition, the army stationed in the Fortune God dynasty's territory had been routed many times and suffered heavy losses. It was unknown how much of the Fortune God dynasty's territory's resources and wealth had been plundered. During this period of time, the Foreign Domains allied army had encountered the Fortune God dynasty's crazy counterattack. No one knew how many experts had fallen. It could be said that they had suffered heavy losses. Both sides had suffered heavy losses. At this point, the war could be considered to have stopped. Both sides were unable to launch further attacks. Both sides were shrinking their defensive lines, trying their best to avoid a bigger battle. Neither side could bear the consequences of continuing to fight to the death. In order not to perish together, both sides had a tacit understanding to stop attacking each other. Both sides were very clear that the martial epic was not the only epic in this world. Outside the martial epic, there were countless surviving ancient epics that were eyeing the entire Fortune world covetously. They were constantly thinking of invading the Fortune world and destroying the martial epic. In this kind of situation, unless one side had absolute confidence in destroying the other side, it was impossible to truly fight this kind of mutually destructive battle. If one side was crippled, the ancient epics would benefit. The foreign domain's allied army also knew that the Fortune God dynasty's territory was the Fortune God dynasty's bottom line. If they couldn't recover their territory, they would definitely launch a crazy counterattack. In addition, the Fortune God dynasty's elite army had returned, and their strength had soared. They really couldn't withstand the Fortune God dynasty's attack. Hence, they could only retreat half-heartedly. After withdrawing from the Fortune God dynasty's territory, both sides resumed their peace. Compared to the previous calm on the surface, this time was an unprecedented calm. Neither side had the strength to cause any more friction. Especially in this expedition to the Fortune Divine Dynasty, they had suffered another heavy blow. God knows how many tribes and tribes' elite armies had suffered devastating losses, and the entire tribes and tribes had been uprooted. These annihilated tribes naturally didn't have the qualifications to occupy better territory. In order to compete for these territories, the foreign domains once again set off a reign of terror. In the Outlands, there was no concept of peaceful development or common development. If one race occupied a bit more resources, then the other races occupied a lot less. Therefore, the development of a tribe was inevitably accompanied by a reign of terror, a life and death struggle. Those tribes whose elites were completely annihilated, no matter how glorious they were and how influential they couldn't defend their original territory under such circumstances. Other than these battles for territories, the numerous resources and wealth they had plundered from the Fortune Divine Dynasty needed to be distributed. From top to bottom, the largest portion was divided among the clans with Empyrean masters, followed by the imperial clans with emperors, and then the rest of the clans. Layer by layer, the resources were divided. Fortunately, there's a lot of resources and wealth plundered this time. Even the tribes at the bottom got a lot of good things. The overall strength of the foreign domains had increased a lot, narrowing the gap between them and the Fortune God dynasty. Originally, the Fortune God dynasty occupied the most prosperous land in the entire Fortune world, as well as the majority of the wealth and resources. If it weren't for the harsh living environment in the foreign domains and the incomparably ferocious beasts that were difficult to conquer, the foreign domains would have been razed to the ground by the Fortune God dynasty. Although the foreign domains were also very powerful, if the Fortune God dynasty was willing to pay the price, it could also raise the foreign domains to the ground. However, no one in the Fortune God dynasty was willing to pay such a price. Although there were many benefits in destroying the foreign domains, no one knew if they would fall in such a war. If that happened, it would only be a wedding dress for others. Now that they had plundered so much of the Fortune God dynasty's wealth, the foreign domains had narrowed the most fundamental strength gap between the Fortune God dynasty and the foreign domains. Therefore, just dividing the internal territories and the wealth from the Fortune God dynasty was enough to keep the foreign domains tribes busy for a long time. No one had the mood to continue creating friction with the Fortune God dynasty. For the Fortune God dynasty, this period of time was very important. With this period of time, the Fortune God dynasty could catch a breath from the continuous heavy blows and not be damaged to the core. However, with the Fortune God dynasty's deep heritage, it would take a very long time to recover from this series of heavy blows. However, the current situation was even worse. The Chaos Overlord could appear at any time and lead the foreign domains to attack the Fortune God dynasty, while the ancient era forces were eyeing the Fortune world covetously. Internal troubles and external aggression. Chapter 36:01. With the return of the Fortune God dynasty's army, the foreign armies were successfully driven out of the Fortune God dynasty's territory. However, the situation of internal and external troubles did not change. The losses suffered in this series of events were the Fortune Divine Dynasty's most elite forces. No one knew how long it would take for the Fortune Divine Dynasty to recover from these losses. This had already determined that the Fortune Divine dynasty would be in a state of strategic retreat for a very long time in the future. They would not be as aggressive as they were before. The Fortune Divine dynasty's invincible confidence in being able to face attacks from foreign lands and ancient eras wasn't without reason. They weren't even worried about entering the battlefield of other eras. There was indeed a reason why they were confident in themselves. The foreign lands were digesting the gains and losses this time, and so was the Fortune God dynasty. They had suffered heavy losses this time, and many tribes were uprooted. It had been many years since the Fortune God dynasty had suffered such heavy losses. At this time, the tribes that had been invaded by the foreign lands had either been uprooted or surrendered to the foreign lands, becoming the vanguard of the foreign lands army. Facing these two-faced tribes, the Fortune Divine dynasty's attitude was only one, and that was to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. The ones responsible for taking action were the veteran Heavenly Venerables. After returning from the Road of Fortune, they found that there was no territory for them in the entire Fortune God dynasty. During this period of time, they were sullenly holed up like turtles. Now, they finally had a chance to take action. Naturally, they would take action to wipe out the tribes in their own territories. Although the Fortune God dynasty was currently in a situation of internal and external troubles, the Fortune God dynasty's handling was even more unyielding. They would not allow anyone to be half-hearted. If they let them go this time, wouldn't it be telling all tribes that they could surrender at will? Then the next time they faced such a situation, it would be terrifying to think about it. While the Fortune God dynasty was dealing with the aftermath of the war, Yi Shiwen was in seclusion in the divine court to recover from his injuries. This time, his injuries were too serious. At this time, the chaos in the Fortune God dynasty and the foreign armies had nothing to do with him. He couldn't care less. In fact, he didn't even have the time to meet the human emperor and the other elite troops of the human race when they returned. He had to seize every minute and every second to recover from his injuries. Fortunately, with Xin Yuan Tianzuan's presence in the divine court, all matters of the human race were carried out in an orderly manner, so no Tianzuan dared to cause trouble here. Emperors, quasi-emperors, god-kings, and the like had come from all over the eastern region to make a pilgrimage in the past few years. They wanted to see Yi Shiwen and thank him for everything he had done for the eastern region. Of course, they couldn't see Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen, who was in closed-door training, couldn't see anyone, let alone these people. Yi Shiwen was finally able to catch his breath after a few years. He was no longer in a state where he could die at any time. It could be said that he had passed through the most dangerous stage. But even so, there was no way for him to recover from the injuries he had suffered. The rate of recovery was not ideal. According to the normal rate of recovery, it might take tens of thousands of years to completely recover. Therefore, for him, every time he used the supreme ancestral symbol, there was great danger. If he wasn't forced into a dead end, he wouldn't have used it. Not only could he self-destruct in the process of using the supreme ancestral symbol, even if he used it to kill a powerful enemy, he could be killed afterwards, because he was too weak at that time. At this time, he finally understood why Heavenly Talisman Immortal chose to rely on him, and even gave him the supreme ancestral symbol. The power of this thing was infinite, but who could bear the consequences? After using it, Heavenly Talisman Immortal hadn't recovered from his injuries, even after more than 10,000 years. The last time he used it, he had narrowly escaped death and almost died in the hands of Crimson Hair, Archdevil. It was only because of a fortuitous encounter that he was able to recover so quickly. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to make it in time for the Fortune God Dynasty's army to recapture Moon City. If he didn't make it in time, the Fortune God Dynasty's elite army might not have been able to escape, and all of them would have suffered heavy losses. And in the end, without his intervention, the human race would have been destroyed, and even the Eastern Heavenly Venerate residents might have been captured. The consequences would have been too severe. There were many things that were linked to each other. As long as one of them was missed, then the rest would be completely unattainable. Such injuries would take a very long time to recover. Therefore, the entire Fortune God dynasty was in chaos now, and he couldn't do anything about it. He didn't have the energy to interfere. After this battle, the entire Fortune world situation would undergo tremendous changes. Whether it was the outer domain or the Fortune divine dynasty, they would not be able to pass this peacefully. There would definitely be earth-shaking changes. Moreover, it would not be uncommon to fight for territory. However, he didn't let the human race take advantage of the victory to expand their territory. The human race had just obtained their current territory for more than 10,000 years, and they had not fully digested it yet. Moreover, he wanted to compete for the Eastern Heavenly Venerate position, so some things couldn't be done too obviously. What worried him was that he would miss the Eastern Heavenly Venerate selection because of this battle. Then all his hard work during this period of time could be said to have been in vain. Although he had made great contributions during this period, it was an indisputable fact that he was seriously injured. The Eastern Domain could not be without a leader. Even the Central Domain had Spacetime Heavenly Venerate to manage it. Just as Ishiwen was worrying about the Eastern Heavenly Venerate selection, a Heavenly Venerate came to Divine Court. It was Warlord, who he hadn't seen for a long time. During this time, Warlord was busy helping the Middle Heavenly Venerates stabilize the various situations in the Fortune God Dynasty. Even though he knew that Yishiwen was injured, he didn't come personally. He only sent his disciple, Butterfly Sovereign, to visit Yishiwen. However, in the end, he didn't see Yishiwen, who was seriously injured. It was Moon Empress Bien Xiaoya who received him. Now that the entire Fortune God Dynasty situation had stabilized a little, Warlord personally came. This time, even Yishiwen was alarmed. He was the first Heavenly Venerate to visit after the battle. During this period, these Heavenly Venerates were busy stabilizing the situation in various places or fighting for territory. No one had the time to visit Yishiwen. In a space in the depths of the Divine Court, Yishiwen sat cross-legged on a cloud bed, and opposite him, Zhan Zun sat opposite. Taoist Wu Zun's injury seems to be very serious. Warlord looked at Yishiwen and said, although Yishiwen seemed to be fine from the outside, he could feel that Yishiwen's momentum was far less than before. Although Yishiwen's realm and strength had stabilized at the Heavenly Venerate level, it couldn't be compared to his peak. Even with the recovery ability of a Heavenly Venerate level, he was still injured like this. This showed how serious his injury was this time. After returning from the Era battlefield, Warlord also heard about Yishiwen's many achievements. Among them, the most brilliant one was naturally defeating the army of the Storm Sea region with his own strength. Compared to the attention of others, these Heavenly Venerates paid more attention to Yishiwen's achievement in defeating the Chaos Overlord. Although it was only a trace of spirit, everyone knew that in terms of strength, it was already the strength of a peak Emperor Lord. It was not something that ordinary people could contend with. But Yishiwen not only blocked it, but also killed the Chaos Overlord. This kind of terrifying strength couldn't help but shock the Heavenly Venerates. Especially in the beginning, many people almost thought that it was a false rumor. How could Yishiwen do such a thing? It was simply unbelievable. How could they easily believe it if they didn't see it with their own eyes? However, more and more details came later, which made these people have no choice but to admit that Yishiwen had indeed done it. However, the price to do so was very heavy. Even with Yishiwen's strength, he still hadn't recovered after such a long time. There's really nothing in this world that could be done easily. It's really serious. Yishiwen said with a grin. The news that he was seriously injured had probably spread throughout the Fortune God Dynasty. He had just become famous in the world, but then there was the rumor that he was seriously injured. This made him feel a little helpless. I'm sorry, there were too many things to do during this time, so I couldn't come immediately, said Warlord. It's okay. If you came previously, I'm afraid I couldn't come to see you, said Yishiwen. He had just barely suppressed a part of his injury recently. If Warlord came too early, he might not have had the time to meet him. Middle Heavenly Venerate also asked me to bring his greetings, but he has a lot of things to do. He has to manage the entire Fortune God Dynasty. You know this, so he really can't find time to come, said Warlord. Well, it's okay. It's just a small matter, but it has also affected everyone's concern," said Yi Shiwen with a smile. He didn't take it to heart. Compared to this kind of superficial matter, he was more concerned about practical benefits. "In addition to bringing greetings, I also brought something that should be helpful to Taoism Friend's current situation," said Warlord. As he said, Warlord's palm turned slightly, and a pitch-black porcelain bottle appeared on his palm. Then he looked at Yi Shiwen and continued, "This is a drop of 9 extremes divine water. It has a great effect on healing. It is a treasure obtained by the Fortune God dynasty in the endless chaos. Among the many treasures of the Fortune God dynasty, it is also extremely rare. I think it should be the most suitable healing treasure for Taoism Friend's current state." Chapter 36:02 9 Extremes Sacred Water. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes. He did not know what this 9 extremes sacred water was, but this was normal. He had only achieved Tao for a short period of time, and many things were beyond his knowledge. However, the fact that Zhan Zun personally came to deliver healing pills was within his expectations, because no matter what, he had just made a series of great contributions to the Fortune Divine Dynasty, so the Fortune Divine Dynasty couldn't possibly ignore him like this. It was just that he had to calm down the chaotic situation in the Fortune God Dynasty some time ago, so he did not come to visit Yi Shiwen immediately. Meritorious deeds must be rewarded, and mistakes must be punished. This was the principle of the Fortune God Dynasty, and it was also the only way for a force to win over the hearts of the people. This was also the basic bottom line. If the people of the Fortune God Dynasty could not even do the basics, then the people of the Fortune God Dynasty would have long been scattered, and they would not have persisted until now. Yes, the Middle Celestial Venerate also heard about your injuries, so he personally went to the treasury to find the 9 extremes divine water. When the Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord fought against the chaotic overlord, his body was shattered many times, and he relied on the 9 extremes divine water to recover. The War Venerate also told him about the Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord. Yi Shiwen nodded. From the words of the War Master, he could roughly understand how precious the 9 extremes sacred water was. "Then I thank the Middle Heavenly Master." Yi Shiwen nodded and said, and then accepted the 9 extremes sacred water. This was also what he deserved. He had risked his life for the Fortune God Dynasty, and this was what he deserved. "This is the reward that Taoism Friend deserves," the War Master said. "When I heard about Taoism Friend's achievements, I also felt that it was incredible, but Taoism Friend has repeatedly created miracles since his debut. This is not impossible." Yi Shiwen smiled and said, "Oh yes, I have been in closed-door cultivation to heal my injuries during this time, so I did not know much about many things in the outside world. I just want to ask, when will the Eastern Heavenly Master selection begin?" So that's what fellow Taoist is worried about. However, if fellow Taoist is worried about this, then you can rest assured. The Middle Heavenly Master has already gone against the majority's opinion and decided to postpone the selection of the Eastern Heavenly Master until after fellow Taoist recovers. When fellow Taoist recovers, the selection of the Eastern Heavenly Master will begin. At this time, he was also very emotional. Originally, the Middle Heavenly Master pushed him and Silver Moon forward, but in fact he was more optimistic about Silver Moon. Because Silver Moon only needed time to recover a considerable amount of cultivation, and Yi Shiwen was too far away. However, Yi Shiwen had already cultivated to such a level in such a short period of time. He could even kill the Chaos Overlord. Moreover, he had defeated the army of the Stormy Sea region by himself. In terms of strength, he could be said to be terrifying. In this power, Yi wins strength, and the heavenly heaven's friend. Not his heavenly Ye's strength. Of Yi have, God, and the same, but heave, and was heavenly battle, and the heavenly Yi, and was of the off the heavens. Without Yi Shiwen's participation in the selection of the Eastern Celestial Master, how could they convince the masses? Especially now, Yi Shiwen's prestige in the Eastern region was unprecedented. Even the original Eastern Celestial Master, who was now a Middle Celestial Master, was far inferior to Yi Shiwen in terms of prestige. If the Fortune God dynasty appointed an Eastern Celestial Lord without Yi Shiwen's approval, then the entire Eastern region would revolt. No matter from which aspect, delaying the Eastern Heavenly Master selection for Yi Shiwen was the most appropriate choice. He was just pushing the boat along with the current. However, even though he was pushing the boat along with the current, this also represented the attitude of a middle Empyrean. Because although Yi Shiwen's prestige was very high, there were still many people who hoped to participate in the Eastern Heavenly Master selection early. This was not a small amount of pressure. The War Master looked at Yi Shiwen. Originally, he was just a foil among the Eastern Heavenly Master candidates. Now, he had become a popular candidate for the Eastern Heavenly Master. By the way, the Middle Heavenly Master also asked me to pass on a message to let you go to the Fortune God dynasty after your injuries are healed. Previously, you saved the entire Fortune God dynasty coalition army. Didn't we agree to let you listen to the Fortune Heaven Monarch once? This time you can go. The War Elder gave Yi Shiwen a knowing look, and Yi Shiwen immediately understood. The Middle Heavenly Venerate naturally hoped that he could become the Eastern Heavenly Venerate. It wasn't only because his injuries had delayed the selection of the Eastern Heavenly Venerate, but also because he wanted him to go to the Fortune Divine Capital to listen to the primordial spirit lecture of the Heavenly Venerate before the selection. At that time, not only would Yi Shiwen's injuries be healed, but his cultivation would also improve and reach an unprecedented peak. Under such circumstances, if Yi Shiwen still lost, then there was nothing to say. This time, the position of the Eastern Heavenly Master will probably be decided between you and the Space-Time Heavenly Master, said the War Master. Some veteran Heavenly Masters originally wanted to participate, but their performance in the foreign domain invasion this time was too disappointing. They haven't even become the Eastern Heavenly Master, but they are already like this. Who can rest assured in handing over the Eastern domain to them in the future? Yi Shiwen nodded. Among his competitors this time, his biggest competitors were the veteran Empyreans. These veteran Empyreans were very prestigious, strong, and had a wide network of connections. Moreover, they made great contributions to the Fortune God dynasty in the past. They were also very experienced. These were all advantages that Yi Shiwen did not have. However, their performance in the foreign domain invasion this time had directly eliminated them. Regardless of whether they were willing or not, the Fortune God dynasty couldn't hand over the Eastern domain to someone who would put his own safety at the critical moment. The position of the Eastern Heavenly Master was not only glory, but also represented endless benefits behind it. At the same time, it was also a responsibility and responsibility. However, the performance of these people during this period of time had really disappointed the Fortune God dynasty. Other than these people, there were also the candidates recommended by the various Heavenly Venerables. These people were all juniors who would become Heavenly Venerables later on, but each of them was an outstanding figure in their respective domains and had made great contributions to the Fortune Divine Dynasty. Of course, they were not as good as those veteran Heavenly Venerables. Sometimes, time could pile up everything. However, during this period of time, Yi Shiwen had made countless contributions. He had even destroyed the era, saved the Fortune God dynasty's army, defeated the Stormy Sea region's allied forces, and so on and so forth. The candidates recommended by the various Heavenly Venerates didn't even have a single merit comparable to this, let alone so many merit points. Just the popularity and advantages accumulated through these contributions were enough to eliminate all of these people. And after these people were eliminated, the only one who could compete with Yi Shiwen was Space-Time Heavenly Master. Space-Time Heavenly Venerate's strength was second only to the 4 Heavenly Venerates. He had ruled the Central region for many years and made countless contributions to the Fortune God dynasty. With such qualifications, strength, and contributions, he could be mentioned in the same breath as Yi Shiwen's series of earth-shattering contributions during this period of time. The Heavenly Masters also knew that even if they wanted to compete, if the gap was too wide, they wouldn't be able to convince the masses even if they forcibly fought for it. Naturally, they would retreat. Therefore, the one who could really pose a threat to Yi Shiwen was Spacetime Heavenly Master. And Yi Shiwen said, Spacetime Heavenly Master was not like the other Heavenly Masters. Whether it was strength, qualifications, or contributions, he was not inferior to Yi Shiwen. Such a person must go all out to defeat him. Originally, this was what Yi Shiwen was most worried about. He had not yet recovered, and with his current state, it was impossible to compete with Spacetime Heavenly Master for the position of Eastern Heavenly Master. But now it was different. With 9 extremes divine water, his recovery was just around the corner. Before his recovery, he didn't have to worry about the Eastern Heavenly Master selection. It could be said that a wave of timely rain had come. I'm here mainly to see if you're all right and to deliver the 9 extremes divine water to you. Now that I've achieved my goal, I'll take my leave. I still have a lot of things to deal with in the Central Region, said War Master. As one of the most important assistants of the Middle Heavenly Master, he was also assigned a lot of tasks in the Central Region. The scope of the Central Region was too large. With the energy of a Heavenly Master, it was impossible to manage it. Many thanks for coming here personally, Yi Shiwen said. After sending War Master away, Yi Shiwen immediately poured out the drop of 9 extremes divine water. It was only a drop, but the vitality contained in the 9 extremes divine water erupted almost instantly, forming a terrifying tide. That porcelain bottle looked ordinary, but it was actually a magic treasure. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to contain this drop of 9 extremes divine water. Yi Shiwen could almost see the enormous life force contained within it with his naked eye. Yi Shiwen's face showed a bit of joy. He opened his mouth and swallowed the drop of 9 extremes divine water. Suddenly, the huge energy spread in his mouth and instantly dispersed into Yi Shiwen's limbs and bones. Under the nourishment of this unimaginably huge vitality, every cell in Yi Shiwen's body was being repaired. The originally terrifying injuries were being nourished by this vitality, little by little. In particular, some of the injuries that Yi Shiwen had no way to deal with were being healed at this time. Moreover, they were healing at a speed visible to Yi Shiwen's naked eye. Originally, Yi Shiwen seemed to be fine on the surface, but his internal organs had suffered serious damage. Now, these internal organs were being nourished by this vitality, and some of the cracks began to slowly disappear. The wounds that had been bleeding nonstop also stopped bleeding. His whole body was recovering at an astonishing speed. The effect of the 9 extremes divine water was indeed not just for show. The things left behind by the good fortune Heaven Lord were really amazing. If he had the 9 extremes divine water when he fought against the chaotic overlord, he would not have had to worry at all. He could have used it unscrupulously. He might even have been able to chase the Stormy Sea Area army into the Stormy Sea Area. After 3 days, Yi Shiwen's injuries were completely healed. Chapter 36:03. In just 3 days, relying on the 9 extreme divine water, Yi Shiwen had already fully recovered. This kind of recovery efficiency was truly amazing, because the injuries he suffered this time were even more serious than the last time. Yet he was able to fully recover in just 3 days. This kind of speed was already out of his expectations. The treasures left behind by the fortune Heavenly Lord were truly good stuff. However, treasures of this level that could prolong one's life, the Fortune God Dynasty's treasury probably didn't have many of them. It should be a treasure among treasures. If it wasn't for his great contribution this time, the Fortune God Dynasty wouldn't have chosen to reward him with a treasure of this level. The first thing Yi Shiwen did after recovering was to invite Xianyuan Tianzuan, who was guarding Mount Buzhou, over. Deep in the Divine Court, inside a secret territory, Yi Shiwen and Xianyuan Tianzuan sat facing each other. Yi Shiwen took a sip of tea and said, "Thank you for your help this time. If it wasn't for you, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to escape this disaster. It's nothing. I also don't like some people's faces. They're useless against outsiders, but they're vicious towards their own people." Xianyuan Tianzuan shook his head in disdain. "But you're recovering so quickly, it's beyond my expectations. It must be the war god who sent you a holy healing treasure. And indeed, the war god sent me a drop of 9 extreme divine water. Yi Shiwen nodded, his expression indifferent, not hiding anything. So it's 9 extreme divine water, no wonder. Xianyuan Tianzun nodded, suddenly realizing. If it's the 9 extremes divine water, then it makes sense. This is a precious treasure, and there aren't many of it in the entire Fortune Divine Dynasty. Based on your injuries, only the 9 extremes divine water can cure them. But it's also true, you've made such a great contribution this time. Any reward is worthy of you. Xianyuan Tianzun took a sip of tea and said with a smile. During this time, it's all thanks to you protecting me. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Yi Shiwen said, It's nothing, I didn't have much time, I'll just take it as stopping here. Xianyuan Tianzun smiled. To a Tianzun, a few years' time was like taking a nap. It really wasn't much. It was not that he did not do anything during this period of time. He preached the Tao on Mount Buzhou and gave pointers to a few sovereign emperors of the human race in their cultivation. Anyway, he did not belong to any powerful race, nor had he established a sect. Most of the time, he had no taboos and did not care about this problem. All right, after drinking your tea and seeing that you're fine, I'll take my leave. I'll be heading to the Era battlefield in the next period of time. I've been entrusted by the Middle Empyrean to oversee Moon City for a while. I'm always busy. There's no time for me to stop. Xianyuan Empyrean laughed. For a peak heavenly venerable like Xianyuan Tianzun, the Fortune God dynasty naturally would not allow such a high level of combat power to remain idle. They would definitely make use of him, which was normal. Currently, the reconstruction of Moon City could be said to be 1,000 things waiting to be done. Even with the help of the other 9 divine cities, without a peak heavenly venerable to oversee, the situation was still dangerous. Who knew how long it would take to rebuild Moon City to its former state? Even if they wanted to rebuild Moon City to the point where it could protect itself, the huge price they would have to pay was not something that could be completed in a short period of time. The recent series of events had truly damaged the foundation and vitality of the Fortune God dynasty. Originally, it did not matter if an unaffiliated person like Xianyuan Tianzun was unwilling to work for the Fortune God dynasty. In any case, he did not establish a sect. He was free and could be treated as an honored guest. But when the Fortune God dynasty needed him, Xianyuan Tianzun must stand up and work for the Fortune God dynasty. How could the benefits of the Fortune God dynasty be so easily reaped? As the saying goes, karma and retribution, everything is determined by the heavens. Since he had received benefits from the Fortune God dynasty, he naturally had to work for the Fortune God dynasty and could not stay out of it. The more benefits he obtained from the Fortune God dynasty, the deeper the entanglement would be. Just like Yi Shiwen, if he really became the Eastern Heavenly Venerable, then the Fortune God dynasty's matters would be his matters, rising and falling as one. This was the so-called entering the world, using the Fortune God dynasty's power to help him improve. Xianyuan Tianzun, on the other hand, was obviously walking a different path. He would try his best to not meddle in the Fortune God dynasty or even the Fortune world matters. This way, he could reduce karma and avoid calamities. These two paths were completely different cultivation methods. There was no difference in superiority or inferiority. The only difference was the path they chose. Of course, whether it was entering the world or leaving the world, one must have tyrannical strength as a guarantee. Otherwise, one would only become a target for others. If one couldn't even protect themselves, how could they even talk about entering the world? And without a doubt, whether it was Yi Shiwen or Xianyuan Tianzun, both possessed such strength. After sending Xianyuan Tianzun away, Yi Shiwen also came out of closed-door cultivation. His body had been extremely weak for the past few years, but now it was finally getting better. The first thing he did after coming out of closed-door cultivation was to summon Bian Xiaoya and ask her about the human race's situation. During this period of time, he had been in closed-door cultivation, basically not caring about the human race's situation. Seeing that her master had come out of closed-door cultivation, Bian Xiaoya rushed over as fast as she could. During this period of time, she was also very worried about Yi Shiwen's injuries, but she also understood that with her current cultivation, there was nothing she could do to help Yi Shiwen. You've broken through to the third realm? Yi Shiwen raised his eyebrows when he saw Bian Xiaoya's cultivation, showing a hint of joy. It had only been 10,000 years, but Bian Xiaoya had already stepped into the third realm. Moreover, she was already at the peak of the third realm, much stronger than when she went to the era battlefield. This kind of speed was even faster than when Yi Shiwen was in the myriad heavens. Even when he was in the myriad heavens, it took him several tens of thousands of years to break through to the third realm. This kind of speed was enough to be proud of among the sovereign emperors. As for Yi Shiwen's speed after coming to the fortune realm, that was another matter. Not everyone had Yi Shiwen's fortuitous encounter, so not everyone could be mentioned in the same breath as Yi Shiwen. This kind of speed was already very good in Yi Shiwen's opinion. Bian Xia nodded and said, I just had a breakthrough. This time, I went to the era battlefield and gained a lot. Bian Xiaoya said from the bottom of her heart. If she had not gone to the era battlefield, perhaps she would never have imagined that there would be such a vast war in her life. Compared to the war on the era battlefield, the war within the fortune realm was like a child's play. Probably only the scale of the war during the foreign full-scale invasion could be compared to the scale of the war on the era battlefield. Well, it's good that there was a harvest. Yi Shiwen nodded. This was the fundamental reason why he brought Bian Xiaoya and the others to the era battlefield. Master has come out of closed-door cultivation. His injuries should be healed. Bian Xiaoya said, well, his injuries are no longer a problem. In the next period of time, I will go to the Fortune Realm Divine Capital. You have to be careful. Because of the previous relationship, there is no guarantee that someone will come to attack Mount Buzhou. You have to be 120% vigilant. If necessary, go and awaken my sword principal avatar. Yi Shiwen said. After this war, the fact that Yi Shiwen had a sword principal avatar was no longer a secret. Having such an avatar was equivalent to the human race having two great supremes. This arrangement of the rapid increase in strength was only a little bit. Previously, when using the energy treasure clothes, Sword Master was also seriously injured. This time, with the help of the 9 extremes divine water, he had recovered to his peak state. Moreover, with the integration of Yi Shiwen Sword Master's memories and experience, coupled with the harvest from this war, it was only a matter of time before he broke through to the third realm of Heavenly Master Realm. This time, Yi Shiwen did not bring Sword Master to the Fortune Realm. Instead, he left him for closed-door cultivation. If any unexpected situation really happened, Sword Master could buy a considerable amount of time for Yi Shiwen to return. After all, the Fortune Realm Divine Capital was not the epic battlefield. It was not so far that even the transmission array could not reach it. Well, I understand, Bian Xiaoya said with a smile. For her, whether it was Yi Shiwen Sword Master or Sword Master's avatar, they were all the same. After asking about the situation of the human race and explaining some other things, Yi Shiwen left Mount Buzhou and went to the Fortune Realm Divine Capital. Yi Shiwen took a step forward. Each step covered hundreds of millions of miles. In a short time, the figure of the Fortune Realm Divine Capital appeared in front of him. After entering the Fortune Realm Divine Capital, Yi Shiwen sent a message to War Master. When the time came, he would need War Master to lead him to the Fortune Pavilion to listen to the teachings. This time, listening to the teachings was very important to him. According to his estimation, as long as there were no unexpected accidents, he should be able to step into the 7th realm and truly possess the realm of a high-level heavenly master. In terms of combat power, he could even fight with the masters of the 8th realm without falling into a disadvantageous position. Even when facing the masters of the 9th realm, he could retreat unscathed and protect himself. On the street, there was an endless stream of people. Everyone walked past Yi Shiwen, but it seemed as if no one could see Yi Shiwen. They just hurriedly walked past him. It was as if there was an invisible airflow around Yi Shiwen, diverting them away. Suddenly, at this time, a young girl dressed in plain clothes hurriedly passed by Yi Shiwen's side. Yi Shiwen slightly raised his brows, because this young girl's body unexpectedly had a familiar aura. Wait a minute. Yishiwen opened his mouth, and suddenly, the young girl stopped as if she had been immobilized by the body freezing technique. Suddenly encountering this situation, the girl's face showed a somewhat frightened expression. Then, a burst of violent magic fluctuations erupted from her body, trying to break free from this non-existent paralysis spell. But her skill was far inferior to Yishiwen's. How could she break free? Although Yishiwen did not actually cast any paralysis spell, it was only a matter of a few words. Chapter 36:04. You don't have to struggle. Yishiwen had a gentle smile on his face as he came in front of the girl. He just waved his hand slightly, and the shackles on the girl's body were suddenly released. There was no shackle in the first place, but Yishiwen's verbal compliance law was very terrifying. How could the girl not understand that she had met an expert? In this divine capital of fortune, there were many experts, and there were many emperor lords. It was not rare at all, so it was not strange to meet an expert. The people around were still walking on their own, as if they did not see what was happening in front of them. Greetings, senior. The girl looked at Yishiwen and quickly bowed. However, she was extremely flustered in her heart. She did not know what this young man with a kind smile was trying to do. In the Fortune Divine Capital, where she grew up, she was deeply aware that she was at the bottom rung of society. Although no one dared to act presumptuously in the Fortune Divine Capital, it was clear that there were some people who could stand above the rules. May I know what's the matter, senior? The girl said. What's your name? Yishiwen asked. Junior is Sun Diandian. The girl said. Sun Diandian? Who is Sun Ziwang to you? Yishiwen asked. The girl's face suddenly changed when she heard this name. She was obviously very frightened that Yishiwen actually knew about this matter. No, I don't know him. The girl said quickly. You don't have to worry. I'm not his enemy. Yishiwen said with a gentle smile on his face. The girl couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when she heard this. Although there was no other evidence to prove it, Yishiwen's words had a kind of unquestionable magic, making everyone else believe his words. Senior knows my father? The girl looked at Yishiwen cautiously and seemed a little strange. This person looked young, but she was sure that he was a great senior. How'd he know her father? Sure enough, you are his daughter, Yishiwen said. He felt a somewhat familiar feeling from this girl just now. He was very familiar with that kind of demonic aura. It was the same origin as his demon wings, the inheritance left by the Demon King. Furthermore, this young woman also had Sun Ziwang's aura. This aura was the aura of a bloodline. Ordinary people would naturally not be able to see through it, but to him, it was all too easy. Since Sun Diandian was Sun Ziwang's daughter, it was very normal for her to cultivate the demon lord's demonic arts. After all, he had left the inheritance of the Devil King to Sun Ziwang, so it was up to him to decide who to pass it on to. Senior and my father are? Sun Diandian looked at Yishiwen and asked. She didn't dare to confirm the relationship between them. I am his teacher, Yishiwen directly said. Teacher? Sun Diandian swayed slightly and then immediately remembered. Ever since she was young, she had always heard Sun Ziwang mention that there used to be such a teacher. Every time he mentioned it, he would sigh. However, she had never met this teacher that her father had mentioned. I didn't expect to meet him here. At this moment, she was almost 80% sure that this person in front of her was her father's teacher. If others wanted to pretend to be an old friend, they would at most pretend to be a teacher, as it would be too easy to be exposed. Grand Disciple Sun Diandian greets Master. Sun Diandian quickly knelt down and respectfully kowtowed a few times. Get up, Yishiwen said. Immediately, Sun Diandian felt a strong force lifting her up, and she could not continue to kneel down. Is your father about to die? Yishiwen glanced at Sun Diandian and suddenly saw many things from her face. Because her cultivation level was very low, she was only on celestial level, not even on immortal level. Fate would leave all kinds of traces on her face. Those who were powerful could see many things from her face, and it was not difficult for them to predict her past and future. Unless she could enter immortal level and get rid of the shackles of the river of fate, jump out of the three realms, and not be in the five elements, then she could get rid of it to a certain extent. However, she still could not hide it from an expert like Yi Shiwen. In order to truly cut off all the traces of fate, she would naturally have to enter Emperor level and cut off her past and future, becoming a person without a past or a future. Only then would people not be able to see anything from her face. With Yi Shiwen's current cultivation, there was nothing wrong with reading someone's fate. Back then, he chose to pass the Demon King's inheritance to Sun Zhiwang because Sun Zhiwang's physique was suitable, and he was also sincere. Sun Zhiwang had knelt in front of him for a full 10 years. Whether it was perseverance or aptitude, it was very suitable. Most importantly, he could see that Sun Zhiwang's face did not look like a person who died young. He should have been lucky on that day, and his future should be limitless. How did he end up in a state where he was dying? After that, he did not care about Sun Zhiwang's matters because Sun Zhiwang was not his disciple, and it was up to him to decide his fate. "Master, please save my father." Sun Diandian quickly knelt down and cowed out. "Get up. Bring me to your father." Yi Shiwen said. "Master, please," Sun Diandian quickly said. She had only come to the city to get medicine as usual. She did not expect to meet the legendary master here. This was simply an incredible miracle, and she did not dare to delay. Her father's injuries were getting more and more serious every day, and she did not know how many tears she shed every day. Now, there was finally hope. Under Sun Diandian's lead, the two of them soon arrived at a commoner's district outside the city. Compared to the Fortune Divine Capital's luxurious and richly ornamented buildings, this was the residence of those who wanted to make a living in the Fortune Divine Capital, but were unable to establish a foothold in the Fortune Divine Capital and stand out. Although the Divine Capital of Fortune was large, it could not accommodate these people. It was very similar to those drifters in the north in Yi Shiwen's previous life. In this civilian area, many people obviously knew Sun Diandian, and when they saw her return, they wanted to come up and greet her. But when they saw Yi Shiwen behind Sun Diandian, they all retreated one after another. Obviously, Yi Shiwen's temperament was obviously not someone who would go to such a place. Although Yi Shiwen's clothes were not very gorgeous, that kind of graceful and luxurious temperament was obviously not something that ordinary people could raise. In the Divine Capital of Fortune, there were countless experts and aristocratic families, and it was unknown how many people they could not afford to offend, so they did not dare to come up and talk to him. Yi Shiwen's complexion was as cold as water. Some of the people in this civilian area had good intentions, but most of them more or less had a bit of malice. Although they hid it very well, but how could they hide it in front of Yi Shiwen? But he did not attack, because he did not even have the desire to attack. In front of him, these people were no different from ants, and he could kill them with a single thought. Soon, they arrived at a thatched cottage in the slums. "Father, I'm back." Sun Diandian quickly came up to the hut and said, "Diandian, you're back. Why are you so fast today?" An old voice came from the hut, accompanied by a violent cough. An old man with a hunchback walked out. When he saw Sun Diandian, he was a little puzzled. After that, when he saw the figure behind Sun Diandian, he seemed to be stunned, not daring to believe that he could still see that person. "Master," Sun Zhiwang said with a trembling voice, and was about to kneel down. Although they hadn't seen each other for more than 10,000 years, he still recognized Yi Shiwen at first glance. This was the man who had changed his life. He would never forget Yi Shiwen for the rest of his life. It was the devil power that Yi Shiwen had imparted to him that had changed his life. "Get up." Yi Shiwen helped Sun Zhiwang to stand up. At this time, Sun Diandian finally confirmed that this was indeed her master, and not someone pretending to be him. Sun Zhiwang was very puzzled, and he did not know how Yi Shiwen found this place, and even came here with his daughter. "What happened? How did you get hurt like this?" Yi Shiwen looked at Sun Zhiwang and said. At this time, Sun Zhiwang's internal injuries were like a volcano that was about to erupt. Once it erupted, it would be a dead end, and even the almighty Golden Immortal would not be able to save him. Sun Zhiwang did not know what to say, and his eyes were full of guilt as he looked at Yi Shiwen. Zhiwang disappointed the teacher. Sun Zhiwang's expression was bitter. Disappointed what? What the hell is going on? Yi Shiwen was not willing to calculate, and he wanted Sun Zhuang to explain himself. When he saw Sun Zhuang more than 10,000 years ago, Sun Zhuang's cultivation was far from the present, but even he could see Sun Zhuang's unswerving determination. This was also an important reason why he chose Sun Zhuang to become the successor of the Demon King. However, after not seeing him for more than 10,000 years, Sun Zhuang had actually become so decadent, and there was no trace of the original high-spirited appearance. He waved his hand, and a stream of life force poured into Sun Zhuang's body, and Sun Zhuang's originally stooped body quickly straightened up again, and the injuries that were like a volcano that was about to erupt also quickly recovered. In almost an instant, he had completely recovered. Yi Shiwen could not do anything about his previous injuries, but to heal Sun Zhuang's injuries was just a piece of cake. It was just that Sun Zhuang's body had recovered to its peak, but his spirit was still a little dispirited, and there was not the slightest trace of high-spirited appearance. Look at you, and you still say that you are the successor of the Demon King? Yi Shiwen frowned and said, the Demon King was an indomitable character, and as a successor, Sun Zhuang naturally should not be like this. Sun Zhuang saw that he could not escape, and he also healed his mouth and slowly told all his experiences over the years. Yi Shiwen knew why Sun Zhuang had become like this. Chapter 36:05. After Yi Shiwen passed down the inheritance of the Demon King, he left not long after and never came back again. Sun Zhuang relied on the inheritance left by Yi Shiwen to cultivate and go to the Stormy Sea region to cultivate and avenge his loved ones. With the complete inheritance of the Emperor, coupled with his heavenly devil physique, he was suitable to cultivate the cultivation techniques of the demon race. His cultivation speed was like a rocket. In just over 10,000 years, he had become a quasi-emperor that shook the entire Stormy Sea region from a rising star who could only be regarded as a rising star in the astral sect. For an existence at Yi Shiwen's level, the level of quasi-emperor was really nothing, and he might not even care about the news of this level. However, for the entire Fortune God dynasty, those who could reach the realm of quasi-emperor could be regarded as the peak existence. In the true sense, it was the peak that ordinary creatures could reach. As for the extreme experts like the Emperor and the Heavenly Masters, only a few of them could reach this level in any era. With such a cultivation base, he finally avenged his parents and loved ones who died tragically in the hands of the foreign creatures in the Stormy Sea region. After that, he was already a famous figure in the Stormy Sea region. It was at this time that he met Fairy Tian Miao of the Nine Nether Cult. Yes, it was the Fairy Tian Miao who was captured by Yi Shiwen on the Celestial Pole Island and used as a maid for a period of time. The two traveled together in the Fortune God dynasty and soon fell in love with each other. In the end, they gave birth to Sun Diandian. However, this matter was eventually discovered by Fairy Tian Miao's sect, the Nine Nether Cult. Fairy Tian Miao was an elite and top disciple that had been cultivated by the Nine Nether Cult for many years. She had great hopes of breaking into the Emperor realm in the future and was cultivated as the core of the cult. The Heavenly Masters were high above and would not meddle in the affairs of the cult. The Emperor realm was the ruler of the entire cult. As the future Emperor realm cultivated by the Emperor realm, Fairy Tian Miao's status in the Nine Nether Cult was imaginable. In order to cultivate the cultivation techniques of the Nine Nether Cult, one must not lose one's virginity. If one lost one's virginity before attaining the Tao, the consequences would be unimaginable. It would almost directly cut off the possibility of advancing further and becoming an Emperor realm. Sun Zhuang had killed a future Emperor of the Holy Nether Church without the need for the enemy to do anything. When the higher-ups of the Holy Nether Church heard about it, they were furious. The enraged higher-ups immediately sent people to capture Sun Zhuang and Fairy Tian Miao. The two of them were not people who would give up without a fight, so a great battle broke out. However, in the end, Fairy Tian Miao was heavily wounded and was brought back to the Holy Church of Nine Nether. Sun Zhuang, on the other hand, was heavily wounded. In the end, he was forced to burn his source power and escape with Sun Dindian. In order to avoid being hunted down by the Holy Church of Abyss, they hid in the divine capital of Fortune. As a supreme sect in the Western region, the Holy Church of Abyss had no control over the divine capital of Fortune. Only after they arrived here could they truly avoid being hunted down by the Holy Church of Abyss. However, over the years, his injuries had become more and more serious, and he was about to die. If he hadn't met Yi Shiwen, he might not have been able to escape this calamity. Only when he faced the Holy Church of Abyss would he truly understand the terrifying power and influence of a supreme sect like the Holy Church of Abyss in the divine capital of Fortune. Not everyone could offend a supreme sect like Yi Shiwen and come out unscathed. In fact, he could even force the heavenly Taoism to lower its head and no longer pursue this matter. Even so, Yi Shiwen, who was an Emperor Realm Emperor, had to hide for a long time before he had the capital to contend against the heavenly Taoism, not to mention Sun Zhuang, who only had the cultivation of a quasi-emperor. If it wasn't for the many inheritances and secret techniques of the Demon King that Yi Shiwen had passed down, he would have died long ago. Since you've encountered such trouble, why didn't you come to me? Yi Shiwen asked. Sun Zhuang smiled bitterly and said, I'm indebted to teacher for not abandoning me and passing down the inheritance of the Demon King. That's why I'm here today. Now that I've offended a supreme sect like the Holy Church of Abyss, they're invincible in the Western region and even have great influence in other major regions. I've already let teacher down. How could I dare to provoke such a strong enemy for teacher? Silly. Do you think I'm a person who's afraid of trouble? Yi Shiwen said with a frown. For others, there have been great changes in the past 10,000 years. If I hadn't come to the divine capital of Fortune, wouldn't you have died? Sun Zhuang smiled bitterly, feeling horrified. He was already a quasi-emperor, and the Tao injuries on his body were terrifying. They were left by an Emperor Realm Emperor, and even an ordinary Emperor Realm Emperor would find it difficult to heal them. However, Yi Shiwen had healed them with just a slight wave of his hand. It was conceivable that Yi Shiwen's current cultivation was incomparable to that of more than 10,000 years ago. During these years, how could he not have thought of looking for Yi Shiwen? After all, Yi Shiwen, who had left him the inheritance, was undoubtedly his greatest backer. However, he still remembered that Yi Shiwen had once said that he had offended a big enemy, and even with his Emperor Realm Emperor cultivation, he had to retreat and not dare to go against him lightly. Under such circumstances, how could he dare to add another great enemy to Yi Shiwen? Although Yi Shiwen had entered the Heavenly Master Realm these years, Sun Zhuang did not know that. He had been busy hiding from the Holy Church of Abyss all these years, and had been in and out of places like the civilian district. How could the matters of those top high-level people have spread here? Therefore, he did not know that Yi Shiwen had become a heavenly master, and only thought that Yi Shiwen was still an ordinary Emperor Realm Emperor. Huang Xiaolong had roamed the Fortune God dynasty for many years, and he was not completely ignorant of the Fortune God dynasty's internal situation. Naturally, he was aware of the 9 nether cults' status in the Fortune God dynasty. Although they were local tyrants, they could directly influence the policies of the Fortune God dynasty. Their real leader was one of the small group of people at the highest level of the Fortune God dynasty. Even an Emperor Realm Master was not a match for such a strong enemy. He naturally did not want to attract such a strong enemy for Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen looked at Sun Zhuang. He had roughly guessed Sun Zhuang's thoughts. He sighed with emotion in his heart. He hadn't misjudged Sun Zhuang at that time. Sun Zhuang had practiced devil power. However, he wasn't a cruel and unscrupulous person. A large part of the reason why he chose Sun Zhuang to be the Devil King's successor was because of this. As for the hardships that Sun Zhuang had suffered over the years, he did not take them to heart. It was normal for men to suffer some setbacks. Furthermore, if one wanted to reach the peak and finally step into the Sovereign Emperor realm, which one of those who could do it was not outstanding and outstanding? They were the cream of the crop for a period of time and had experienced setbacks. I have come to the Fortune God capital for some matters. When I'm done, you can bring Dian Dian back to Mount Buzhou with me. You can come out when you break through the Emperor realm. As for Dian Dian's mother, you can think of a way to bring her out. I will not help you. Yi Shiwen said. Thank you, Master. Sun Zhuang said, but the Holy Church of Abyss is a big problem. If I go to Master, I will inevitably bring a lot of trouble to Master. Now that Master has healed my injuries, I should be able to deal with the pursuers. As long as they're not experts above the Emperor realm, I can deal with them. Yi Shiwen glanced at Sun Zhuang with a sneer and said, Do you think you can handle everything by yourself? Why are you rushing to be a hero? Do you think I can't protect you? In my territory, even if the Abyss Saint comes personally, it will be useless. Sun Zhuang looked at Yi Shiwen in a daze. He seemed to be in disbelief. He knew how terrifying the Holy Church of Abyss was. Moreover, the Abyss Saint was the biggest backer of the Holy Church of Abyss. Master was not afraid of a real celestial master. It seemed that he had missed many things in the past 10,000 years. Thank you, Master. Sun Zhuang knelt down and said. It was fine if he was alone, but now he had to bring his daughter, Sun Dian Dian, who was with him in a precarious situation. How could he bear to do that? Thank you, Master. Sun Dian Dian quickly knelt down and said. Since she could remember, she had been living a miserable life. She was found by the people of the Holy Church of Abyss many times and almost lost her life. Now all of that might be over. As long as she returned with Master, she could live a stable life. Yi Shiwen looked at Sun Dian Dian. She really had the shadow of Fairy Tian Miao when he first came to this vast and unknown world. However, in the blink of an eye, 20,000 years had passed. It had been a long time. For an ordinary celestial master, it was nothing. However, for Yi Shiwen, this undoubtedly occupied a part of his life. The shadow of Little Crescent Moon couldn't help but appear in his mind. 20,000 years had passed in the blink of an eye. That little girl should be slim and graceful by now. He missed his wives even more. After being busy for a while and establishing the position of Eastern Celestial Master, Yi Shiwen decided to find a way to return to the myriad heavens. Although there was no way to go back since ancient times, his level was too low at that time. He was just an emperor. There was no way to go back. However, he was already in the Celestial Master realm now. Maybe there was a way. He could consult a middle Celestial Master. All right, you wait here. It may take a few years. When I come back, I will bring you back to Mount Buzhou. Yi Shiwen said. Without Yi Shiwen's guidance, Sun Zhuang didn't know how long it would take to cross the big region with his cultivation. It was better to wait for him to come back. Yes, Sun Zhuang responded, but found that Yi Shiwen had disappeared in front of him. Chapter 3606. When Yi Shiwen reappeared, he was already in front of the War Elder's residence in the divine capital of Fortune. The War Elder had been waiting here for some time. Sorry, I'm late, Yi Shiwen said faintly. It's all right, the War Elder said. I already know why you're here. Now that I see that you've recovered from your injuries, it seems that you'll be fine. This is all thanks to the 9 extremes divine water that you sent me previously. Otherwise, I wouldn't have recovered so quickly. Yi Shiwen said. It's good that it's useful. Come with me. The War Elder said. The Fortune Pavilion is in the deepest part of the divine capital of Fortune. It was also the place where the Fortune Heaven Monarch cultivated in seclusion. That's why a wisp of the Fortune Heaven Monarch spirit was left behind. The War Elder said as he led Yi Shiwen into the depths of the divine capital of Fortune. Both of them were heavenly masters, so there were naturally no restrictions when they walked. Soon, they arrived in front of a huge palace. The plaque on this palace had the words Fortune Pavilion written in large letters. The 3 large words were written in bold calligraphy, as if they were about to fly out of the plaque. Just by looking at these 3 words, one could see the figure of an indomitable powerhouse standing there. If a cultivator below the heavenly master level saw these 3 words, they would probably fall into a trance and be unable to break free. These 3 words also contain the aura of the Great Way. Although one could comprehend the Great Way, there were too many great ways contained within. If an Emperor Lord saw it, He would only be immersed in it and thus doubt his own great way. For a cultivator, this was equivalent to destroying one's own path. Therefore, this might not be an opportunity. Instead, it could be a fatal danger. "It's inside. I won't send you in," the war elder said. Yi Shiwen nodded. Then, he stepped into the fortune pavilion. The fortune pavilion looked like a majestic palace from the outside, but it was a space of nothingness inside. In this space, one could see the word Tao dancing everywhere. Every word contained a great way. If a mortal obtained it, it would not be difficult for them to become a god king or a quasi-emperor. But here it was nothing at all. It could be said that it could be seen everywhere. In front of him, a faintly discernible shadow was sitting cross-legged in this space. He opened his mouth and chanted ancient scriptures. Every time he opened his mouth, a Tao character would fly out and join the countless Tao characters in the sky. Yi Shiwen discovered that these Tao characters were almost endless, because he hadn't discovered that these Tao characters would disappear. In fact, although there were many Tao characters in this space, they weren't full. But in the next moment, Yi Shiwen understood that the Fortune God Dynasty would come to clean up these extra Tao characters every once in a while. Every Tao character could create an expert. It was hard to imagine how many experts could be created with so many Tao characters. The foundation of the Fortune God Dynasty was indeed not a joke. One small clue could tell the big picture. In this small place, one could see how terrifying the foundation of the Fortune God Dynasty was. Yi Shiwen knew that the figure in front of him was the Fortune God Emperor. But rather than saying that it was the spirit left behind by the Fortune God Emperor, it was better to say that it was because the Fortune God Emperor had been in seclusion here for a long time. Therefore, it was contaminated with the aura of the Fortune God Emperor and naturally evolved into this strange scene. Although this figure was the Fortune God Emperor, he had no consciousness. He would never stop preaching and repeat the great way that the Fortune God Emperor had engraved here. This was extremely important to the various heavenly venerates. Although it couldn't compare to the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch's personal teachings, the effects weren't too far off. Yi Shiwen sat down cross-legged and listened to the sermon. Suddenly, the great way that the Fortune God Emperor was preaching poured into his ears. The Tao characters stopped flying out and directly flew into Yi Shiwen's body. Yi Shiwen's body began to emit a divine brilliance that scattered like rain. At the same time, the shadow of the world tree appeared behind him. This was Yi Shiwen entering the state of enlightenment. The great way that Yi Shiwen cultivated was extremely complex. At this time, it was manifested. There were actually 3,000 shadows. They sat cross-legged at the same time and began to listen. This meant that the 3,000 martial arts were progressing at the same time. The words that came out of the Fortune God Emperor's mouth did not contain any specific cultivation methods. What he described was the essence of the Great Way and the Great Way laws. Therefore, any of Yi Shiwen's 3,000 martial arts incarnations could hear what they wanted to hear. The Fortune God Emperor's speed of speech was not fast, but Yi Shiwen still felt as if countless information was pouring into his mind like an endless tide. Yi Shiwen felt that 3,000 of himself were comprehending at the same time. At the same time, they began to gather and integrate into his body. His cultivation, which had been stuck at the pinnacle of level 6, was beginning to stir. After consuming the world tree fruit, his cultivation had already reached a pinnacle. Originally, it was impossible for him to improve any further in the short term. This was because if he wanted to break through the barrier of the 7th realm, he needed an astronomical amount of understanding of the Great Way. It was not something that could be casually broken through. It was simply impossible to make a breakthrough in a short period of time. It was unknown how many tens of thousands of years would be needed. But now, under the impact of this huge amount of information, Yi Shiwen only felt as if he was in an ocean of the Great Way. He could casually take a ladle of seawater around him and enjoy endless benefits. Every time he absorbed, he felt that the heavenly way in front of him became a little more transparent and familiar. This feeling made him feel extremely comfortable. There was nothing better in the world than this. However, while he was comprehending the Great Way, the magic power in his body was also consumed at an alarming rate. At this time, a king-level dragon vein flew out of his body and was swallowed by him. It completely turned into spiritual power that filled the sky to replenish his consumption. He consumed and replenished at the same time while comprehending the Great Way without moving. Countless great ways appeared around him, displaying various kinds of light. Each light was the meaning of the Great Way. In front of him, the fate creation Heavenly Lord continuously recited ancient scriptures. It was like the sound of the Tao guiding the people of the world towards the Great Way. Under such circumstances, Yi Shiwen's cultivation grew at an alarming rate. The barrier between the 6th realm and the 7th realm was firmly stuck in Yi Shiwen's cultivation growth. The magic power in his body was like a raging tide that constantly impacted this barrier. This allowed him to continuously move closer to the next realm. The 7th realm. This was a threshold. Once Yi Shiwen crossed it, he could become a high-level heavenly master. He would truly become a big shot with a decisive influence in the entire Fortune God dynasty. He would not be like he was now, where his real cultivation realm was neither high nor low. This would allow him to truly have the combat strength to fight against space-time heavenly master. From the hints given by War Elder, Yi Shiwen knew that space-time heavenly master strength was probably above the current Yi Shiwen. Of course, this was under the premise that Yi Shiwen did not use the supreme ancestral symbol. However, the price of using the supreme ancestral symbol was too high. This time, because of his great contribution, the Fortune God dynasty had bestowed him the 9 extremes divine water. What about the next time? It was best not to use it if possible. The middle heavenly master clearly knew this. That was why he had gone against the majority's opinion and delayed the selection of the Eastern Heavenly Master in order to wait for Yi Shiwen to reach his strongest state. Therefore, for Yi Shiwen, this was a situation where he could only advance. He could not retreat. Otherwise, everything that he had painstakingly built up over the years would completely collapse. Under the impact of Yi Shiwen's magical power, cracks began to appear on the original barrier. The first crack appeared, then the second crack appeared, the third crack appeared, and slowly, more and more cracks appeared, and a new realm was gradually revealed in front of Yi Shiwen. The more he comprehended, the more cracks there were on the barrier. He attacked it bit by bit, preparing to break through bit by bit. In front of Yi Shiwen, countless great Tao rushed to embrace him. The more he comprehended, the more he felt the vastness of the great Tao. Even the current Yi Shiwen seemed so ignorant in front of the great Tao. Yi Shiwen's thoughts began to drift away as he listened to more and more of the great paths. He didn't know how much time had passed as the great path went deep into the endless sea of great paths. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen woke up with a start and woke up from the endless great paths. He suddenly felt cold sweat running down his back. He had actually fallen into it. Ever since he achieved Tao, he had not felt like this for a long time. If no one stopped him in the end, he would probably directly fall into the endless great Tao. Then, he would dissipate in the great Tao. He would die and become one with the heavenly Tao. This was the so-called integration of the body with the great Tao. At that point, he might leap to the peak of the heavenly master or even reach the level of the fortune creation heaven lord. However, at that time, he would no longer have his own feelings. He would only be the spokesperson of the heavenly Tao. That would be no different from death to him. Fortunately, at the last moment of integration, he was awakened by the waves of Tao patterns emitted by the world tree. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. This time, his enlightenment almost reached the point of integration of the great Tao. In the end, he did not integrate the great Tao. It could be said that he took a trip to the gates of hell. However, at the same time, he also gained a lot of benefits. His comprehension of the great Tao directly rushed into the 7th realm. The barrier that originally prevented him from breaking through to the 7th realm was broken. His realm also naturally broke through to the 7th realm, the realm of a high-level heavenly master. Chapter 36:07. Yi Shiwen could feel the surging spiritual power and amazing changes in his body after stepping into the high-level Heavenly Lord realm. He had just stepped into the 7th realm, but he was at least twice as strong as when he was at the peak of the 6th realm. This meant that he could not only deal with two of himself at the same time, but he could also deal with several of himself at the same time without any difficulty or disadvantage. The effect of 1 plus 1 was far greater than 2. Relatively speaking, his combat power had directly increased by several times. Moreover, he did not feel that his realm was slipping. In other words, his realm had been completely stabilized when he just stepped into it. In the process of listening, he had already understood many mysteries of the 7th realm, so there would not be a situation where he would regress. Yi Shiwen pinched his fingers and counted. It had been 5 years. He had been sitting for 5 years, and he had broken through to the 7th realm without moving. Of course, in terms of the concept of time, for a heavenly lord, this was no different from 5 days. He knew that it was time to leave this place. When he left this place, he immediately notified the warlord. The warlord was dealing with various matters, so he did not come in person. Instead, he sent his disciple, the Butterfly Sovereign. The Butterfly Sovereign saw Yi Shiwen and saluted immediately. "Butterfly Sovereign greets your honor." Yi Shiwen nodded and said, "Get up. Your honor, my master is dealing with something and can't leave for the time being. He asked me to pick you up," said the Butterfly Sovereign. "It's okay. I wanted to talk to him, but since he has something to do, then forget it. It's not something important anyway." Yi Shiwen shook his head and said. He looked at the Butterfly Sovereign. He had not seen her for more than 10,000 years. The Butterfly Sovereign was indeed much stronger than before. She had also broken through to the peak of the 3rd realm, which was similar to Bian Xiaoye. However, Bian Xiaoye's cultivation time was much shorter than the Butterfly Sovereign's. However, this was considered an ordinary sovereign lord's cultivation speed. In fact, it was considered relatively fast. This was also thanks to the fact that he had a heavenly lord master. Otherwise, ordinary sovereign lords would have to spend at least 10 times more time to break through. "In reply to your honor, I was ordered by my master to inform your honor that since your honor has come out of seclusion, it means that your honor is ready. The selection for the Eastern Heavenly Venerate will begin in 10 years. The selection will be held in the Eastern Heavenly Venerate Mansion. Your honor's opponent will be Spacetime Heavenly Venerate. Whoever wins will be crowned Eastern Heavenly Venerate in the Eastern Heavenly Venerate Mansion." Back then, Yi Shiwen could only be regarded as a powerful friend at most. However, he was still an emperor, while Yi Shiwen was already a heavenly master level expert. Although he was still an emperor, Yi Shiwen was already a heavenly lord level expert. He might even be qualified to compete for the position of Eastern Heavenly Venerate. Once he succeeded, he would become one of the true rulers of the Fortune Divine Dynasty, ruling over the vast lands of the Eastern region. The difference in life's fortunes was like the difference between heaven and earth. Originally, he thought that he was already lucky enough to have the opportunity to become a disciple of the Battle Emperor, one of the top 10 emperors in the world, when his clan had been annihilated. Later, the Battle Emperor passed the Heavenly Venerate tribulation and became a Heavenly Venerate. His status in the Fortune Divine Dynasty also rose. However, compared to Yi Shiwen's fortune, it was far worse. Even Yi Shiwen's disciple was similar to him. After the battle, Emperor returned from Mount Buzhou. He specially called him over and mentioned this matter. Hearing that Bian Xia, who was just a little kid back then, was now on an equal footing with him, the shock in his heart could be imagined. There was always a higher mountain. He was considered lucky, but there was always someone with better luck than him. "I got it. In 10 years, the Eastern Heavenly Venerate Mansion." Yi Shiwen said. 10 years was a blink of an eye for others. So, he could take advantage of this period of time to deal with some trivial matters. "All right, I got it. You can go ahead if you have something to do." Yi Shiwen waved his hand, and the Butterfly Emperor quickly bowed and left. After learning the time of the Eastern Heavenly Venerate selection, Yi Shiwen did not leave immediately. Instead, He took a step and went to the commoner's area outside the Fortune Divine capital. At this time, the commoner's area was shrouded in a wave of Tao power. The mighty Tao power let everyone know that an emperor had arrived. In other places, when an emperor went out, there would be a purple aura covering tens of millions of miles. However, in the Fortune Divine capital, these emperors did not dare to be so ostentatious. After all, an emperor was not considered a big deal in the Fortune Divine capital. There were several heavenly venerates in the Fortune Divine capital. Yi Shiwen opened his eyes and saw a middle-aged man in iron clothes above the commoner's area, riding an unknown fierce beast. He held a long spear in his hand and floated in the sky. The mighty Tao power of the emperor was exuding from his body. Under the mighty Tao power of the emperor, countless creatures in the commoner's area knelt down while trembling. They did not even dare to raise their heads. It was a kind of crushing of the essence of life. They did not even dare to raise their heads. They did not even have the courage to take a look. At the center of this vast imperial monarch's Tao might was a pair of father and daughter. They were shivering under the pressure of this Tao might, and they were practically on the verge of exploding from the pressure. Who else could it be but Sun Ziwang and his daughter? Sun Diandian's cultivation was the lowest. She was not even in the realm of Tao validation. How could she resist the Tao power of the emperor? She would explode in an instant. Although Sun Ziwang's situation was better, and he was already a quasi-emperor, he was nothing in front of an emperor. He was nothing more than an ant or a slightly bigger ant. Moreover, the emperor in front of them was a high-level emperor of the 8th realm. He was an outstanding emperor. Sun Ziwang could only protect Sun Diandian behind him while he faced the vast might of the way by himself. However, he wasn't able to persist for too long. Dense cracks started to appear on his body while golden blood flowed out. It was an extremely shocking sight. Sun Ziwang, Sun Diandian, you and your daughter made me look for you for a long time. I didn't expect you to hide here. No wonder the Holy Church of Abyss could not find you all these years. The middle-aged emperor snorted coldly. Sun Ziwang gritted his teeth. He did not move under this kind of pressure. He could not move, nor could he escape, because once he escaped, his daughter behind him would suffer. It has been so many years. Why do you still force me? Sun Ziwang finally spoke. Just to say this sentence, he spat out a mouthful of blood. He could not suppress the injuries in his body. In front of him was a terrifying emperor. He could easily injure him. Last time, if it was not for his wife risking her life to stop him, and if it was not for him using the teleportation talisman that he had obtained in a fortuitous encounter, he would not have been able to escape. Sun Ziwang, you have tarnished the Holy Virgin of the Holy Church of Abyss. You have destroyed her cultivation and ruined the plans of the Holy Church of Abyss. You deserve to die. The middle-aged emperor said coldly. I can die, but you must let my daughter go. No matter what, she is half a disciple of the Holy Church of Abyss. Sun Ziwang gritted his teeth and said word by word. It was not sweat that flowed from his forehead. Instead, it was blood. Under this kind of pressure, his face changed. He looked extremely ferocious and livid. Half a disciple of the Holy Church of Abyss? Does she deserve it? She's just a vile spawn. However, I will not kill her for the time being. I will bring her back and let the sect leader decide. The middle-aged emperor said coldly. He did not agree with Sun Ziwang's words. However, in the end, he still showed the difference. In his opinion, his grandson was just a lucky kid who had a fortuitous encounter. Even if he killed him, there wouldn't be any trouble. After all, it had been so many years since he had found his own backing. Even if he really had an Emperor Lord's master, it wouldn't matter. An Emperor Lord could only bow down in front of the Holy Church of Abysmal. It was already good enough that the Holy Church of Abysmal didn't look for trouble with them. They wouldn't dare to look for trouble with the Holy Church of Abysmal. As for Sun Diandian, it was true that he was related to the Holy Church of Abyss because of his bloodline. It was also related to Fairy Tian Miao. Although Fairy Tian Miao had made a big mistake and made the Holy Church of Abyss lose its face, it was unforgivable. However, Fairy Tian Miao could cultivate to this level and become the Holy Virgin of the Holy Church of Abyss. She was a candidate for the Emperor in the future. How could she not have a backer? The backer behind Fairy Tian Miao also had a high position in the Holy Church of Abyss. He had not directly intervened because Fairy Tian Miao had made a big mistake. However, it was impossible to let him kill her casually. As the law enforcement Emperor of the Holy Church of Abyss, he also had a high position. He was not afraid of the other party. However, there was no need to become enemies with Sun Dindian, who was like an ant. Don't be complacent. Wait for my master to come back. He will deal with you. Although Sun Dindian could not feel that kind of power because her father had blocked it, it did not mean that she did not understand what the Emperor's coercion meant. She stuck her head out and said with a resolute face. At this time, she only had one sentence in her heart. Master, oh master, where did you go? Yishuan had asked them to wait here 5 years ago. However, they had waited for 5 years. In the end, their master had not returned. Instead, they had met the law enforcement Emperor of the Holy Church of Abyss who had been chasing after them. Their hearts were filled with incomparable despair. If there was any hope, it would be the master who was still unknown. Master? What master? I don't care who he is. So what if your master is an emperor? Everyone has to surrender in front of the Holy Church of Abyss. It's fine if he doesn't come out. However, if he dares to come out, I will find trouble with him and bring him to the Holy Church of Abyss to apologize. The middle-aged Emperor was stunned when he heard Sun Dindian's words. However, he immediately said, for him, it did not matter who the master Sun Dindian was talking about was. The Holy Church of Abyss had dominated the Western region for many years. They had the strength and confidence to do so. Oh, is that so? I want to see how you will bring me to the Holy Church of Abyss to apologize. Chapter 36:08. Oh, is that so? I'd like to see how you're going to bring me to the Nether Church to atone for my crimes. A cold voice came from not far away. Then, a figure appeared in front of the three of them. The middle-aged sovereign emperor immediately became vigilant. When this person appeared just now, he did not sense anything at all. In fact, he did not even sense anything at all. This was simply impossible. Even if a peak sovereign emperor appeared in the vicinity, he would be able to sense it. Not to mention that he did not sense anything when this person appeared right in front of him. Who the hell are you? The middle-aged sovereign emperor shouted. However, he only heard a cold snort. Then, he felt a huge force bombarding his body. With a muffled groan, he was sent flying. His eyes were filled with horror. He simply could not believe that someone could send him flying with just a cold snort. This was simply like a fantasy story. Grandmaster, Sun Dindian reacted almost immediately after seeing this figure. She quickly shouted in surprise. Teacher, seeing Yishuan appear, Sun Ziwang immediately heaved a sigh of relief. The moment the middle-aged sovereign emperor was sent flying, his coercion also disappeared. He could not help but heave a sigh of relief. The injuries on his body also began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the first place, it was not a serious injury. It just looked frightening. The middle-aged sovereign emperor had not been ruthless. He had only displayed his coercion to make Sun Ziwang suffer. Yishuan nodded and let the two of them stand behind him. Then, he walked towards the middle-aged sovereign emperor. The middle-aged sovereign emperor fell hard on the ground. His mount looked as if it had seen a terrifying existence. It immediately knelt down and trembled, not daring to get up at all. The horror in his heart was like a raging sea. Although his mount was not at the sovereign emperor level, it was still at the peak of the emperor level. It had followed him everywhere and fought for God knows how long. Even if it encountered a sovereign emperor, its legs would not go soft. How could it be so frightened? However, when he saw that person's face, he was no longer horrified. Instead, his legs almost went soft. With his cultivation, he was an outstanding figure among the sovereign emperors. Even if he faced an ordinary heavenly venerable, his legs would not go soft. However, when he saw this person, he was almost scared to death. The most popular celestial master was undoubtedly revered martial artist Yi Shiwen. With the return of the Fortune God dynasty's army, Yi Shiwen's many achievements in the epic battlefield were also transmitted to the Fortune God dynasty. In addition, he had single-handedly defeated the Tempest Sea region's army in the Eastern Territory. He had killed several great heavenly venerables, including a peerless overlord like the Primal Chaos Overlord. These amazing battle achievements made Yi Shiwen stand in the limelight for a while. What was more frightening was that in the eyes of the common people, Yi Shiwen was a great hero who had saved the Fortune Divine dynasty from a crisis. Because Yi Shiwen was too far away from them, to them, he was merely a legendary character. Thus, Yi Shiwen was deified. However, it was an entirely different matter for an outstanding heavenly venerate like him. After all, he was the closest group of people to a heavenly venerate, so he was well aware of how terrifying these heavenly venerates were. Moreover, Yi Shiwen was one of the most terrifying people among them. Other celestial venerables might not be able to kill other celestial venerables even after countless years of cultivation. Every celestial venerate had their own life-saving methods. They would erupt when forced into a corner, so they were not easy to deal with. Other celestial venerables tended to follow a certain degree of rules when doing things, so it was rare for them to be ruthless. However, Yi Shiwen was in a completely different situation. He didn't show any mercy at all. In other words, the number of heavenly venerables who had died in his hands since he had attained enlightenment could be counted with 2 hands. In the eyes of the Emperor Lords and heavenly venerables, such a person was simply a super demon. It would have been fine if it was just an ordinary relationship, but now, he had actually courted death. Yes, he now felt that he was simply courting death. No one thought that Sun Ziwang would actually be Yi Shiwen's disciple. There was no intelligence information at all that showed that Sun Ziwang was actually Yi Shiwen's disciple. According to the intelligence obtained by the Nine Nether Church, Sun Ziwang should be from the astral sect. Later, no one knew where he obtained the inheritance of a demon sovereign emperor, so he made a big name for himself. After he made a name for himself, the astral sect did not know why this promising star was expelled from the astral dream. Since then, Sun Ziwang was like a lone cultivator, wandering around the world and experiencing life and death situations. He had never seen any backing elder to help him. Therefore, in their opinion, Sun Ziwang was just a lucky kid who obtained the sovereign emperor's inheritance. Moreover, even if the sovereign emperor who passed the sovereign emperor's inheritance to him was still alive, he would not dare to explode in front of the Nine Nether Church. Therefore, he dared to hunt down Sun Ziwang and scrupulously. In the process of hunting down Sun Ziwang, everything was the same as the intelligence collected previously. Sun Ziwang did not have any backing, and he had not seen any of them until now. However, he never expected that Sun Ziwang's backing, who had never come out, would actually appear. Moreover, it was Yi Shiwen, the heavenly master terminator. This feeling was like buying a lottery ticket and never thinking that it would really win. In the next moment, someone told you that you really won. That kind of dizziness rushed from the soles of the feet to the head. It was not a dizziness of happiness, but a dizziness of fear. Now, there were rumors that Yi Shiwen was going to compete with the space-time Heavenly Master for the position of Eastern Heavenly Master. This kind of person was already the pinnacle of the entire Fortune God dynasty. He could decide his life and death with just a thought. Usually, he was famous in the Nine Nether Church and even the Western region. He could get wind and rain if he wanted. However, he also understood that there were some people that he absolutely could not afford to offend. Not to mention him, even the supreme leader of the Nine Nether Church would not dare to explode in front of Yi Shiwen. He would also have to call Yi Shiwen fellow Taoist. What kind of power and influence was this? And he actually offended such a person. Just thinking about it made him feel weak in the legs. He could feel the almost endless spiritual power in Yi Shiwen's body. As long as Yi Shiwen thought about it, he could die without a burial place. In the face of such a person, he couldn't even muster the slightest bit of resistance. Once he had such a thought, he would be courting death. If he was killed with a single palm strike, even his sect master wouldn't be able to say anything. Because protecting the dignity of a heavenly master was the instinct of every heavenly master. Just like how an emperor would also protect the dignity of an emperor, no one was allowed to provoke him. Are you the one who wants to take me to the Nine Nether Church to apologize? Yi Shiwen said lightly. However, the middle-aged emperor in front of him did not dare to be negligent. The original arrogance that belonged to the law enforcement emperor also dissipated at this time. What arrogance in front of Yi Shiwen? Wasn't that courting death? Was he complaining that he did not die fast enough? This junior doesn't dare. The middle-aged emperor hurriedly crawled over and knelt down to salute. He addressed Yi Shiwen as a junior, not as a junior because of his age, but as a junior who was pursuing the path to the forerunner of the path. As an extreme powerhouse, he also had his own pride, so he did not need to salute so much. However, after he had severely offended Yi Shiwen, he had to lower his head and try his best not to give Yi Shiwen an excuse to kill him. You don't dare. I see that you are very bold, Yi Shiwen just said with a blank expression. However, in the heart of the middle-aged emperor, this was the precursor of an even more terrifying outbreak. At this time, there was only incomparable bitterness in his heart. In front of Yi Shiwen, how could he dare to refute? It was just that he had never thought that Sun Ziwang would have such a powerful backer. In his heart, he was extremely depressed. Sun Ziwang, you have said earlier that you have such a powerful backer. Why would the holy cult still make things difficult for you? Although Fairy Tian Miao's cultivation was broken, which made the holy cult furious, it also depended on the situation. No matter how respected Fairy Tian Miao was in the holy cult, it was not worth mentioning compared to Yi Shiwen. Being able to take this opportunity to let the holy cult and the human race become in-laws was a very good thing in itself. The reason why the Fortune God dynasty could not do anything to the civilian forces was mainly because of this complicated relationship, which made them firmly unite with each other to resist the Fortune God dynasty. Marriage between the major sects was a very normal thing, but it should be a happy thing in itself. As long as Yi Shiwen sent someone to the holy cult to propose marriage, the holy cult would have no reason not to allow it. They had no conflict with the human race in the Eastern Territory and the Western Territory. Being able to form an alliance was naturally beneficial to both sides, who knew that in the end, it would develop into this situation. In the end, a happy event turned into a situation of conflict between both sides. But what he didn't know was that Sun Ziwang didn't know that his teacher had become such a powerful figure later on. He only thought that his teacher was hiding from a powerful Empyrean. He didn't think that his teacher had even killed several Empyreans. This was because the amount of information one could obtain from different levels was completely different. If Sun Ziwang was an emperor, even if he had to hide, he would still know a lot of things. I dare not. This junior did not know that Sun Ziwang was the senior's disciple. Otherwise, this situation would not have happened. The middle-aged emperor hurriedly said with a somewhat bitter smile on his face. Sun Diandian, who was behind Yi Shiwen, opened her small mouth wide. She simply couldn't believe it. This middle-aged emperor was simply the ultimate nightmare for her since she was a child. He was the kind of person who could stop crying when she was a child. She didn't know how many times she had woken up from her dreams because this middle-aged emperor had descended from the sky and killed all of them. And now, this childhood nightmare was kneeling in front of her master, not even daring to raise his head. Was this really not a dream? Chapter 3609. Is this really not a dream? To Sun Diandian, who had been living under the shadow of the middle-aged emperor since she was young, this feeling was as surreal as a dream. Who would have thought that the high and mighty law enforcement emperor of the Holy Abyss cult would be kneeling at the feet of his master? He didn't even dare to move. This was just like a dream. To Sun Ziwang, this feeling was just like a dream. It was simply unbelievable. From the first day, he knew his master. He knew that his master was very powerful. Otherwise, he wouldn't have knelt in front of his master's door for 10 years and begged him to accept him. At that time, his body and mind were filled with hatred, and he wanted revenge wholeheartedly. At that time, what he was most obsessed with was power. Hence, he couldn't be wrong. This was the feeling. At that time, he knew that his master was very strong. An emperor was one of the few top experts in the world. However, he had never thought that his master would be so powerful. Even a law enforcement emperor of the Holy Abyss cult had to be respectful in front of him. He didn't even have the guts to lift his head to look at him. This kind of power was simply unimaginable. Although he also knew about the existence of a celestial master, such a person's level was too low for him. An emperor was the highest level that he could come into contact with. A celestial master was more like a myth and a legend that could be seen but not reached. Even among the emperors, there were many who had never seen a celestial master, let alone the emperor-to-be or king god. They didn't even have the right to meet one. It seemed that his master wasn't an emperor like he had originally thought. He was actually a legendary celestial master that was a level higher than an emperor. He felt unbelievable when he thought about it. He didn't have an emperor as his master, but a celestial master. Was there any more amazing inheritance in the world? Was there any greater adventure than this? He was really lucky. Then, he thought that with such a celestial master, his wife might have a chance to be saved from the Holy Abyss cult. Originally, he had been hopeless when he was facing a giant like Holy Abyss Church. Even if he was as determined as he was, he hadn't dared to hope that he could save his wife. Forget about the fact that he wasn't even an emperor yet. Even if he became an emperor one day, it would be pointless for him to face the Holy Abyss Church. Rushing to the Holy Abyss Church was akin to courting death. If it weren't for the fact that his daughter was still young and needed him to protect her, he wouldn't have been able to hold on any longer. He didn't expect that he would have a chance to save his wife after persisting for so long. At that moment, he had a complicated feeling in his heart. Thinking about how he had been separated from his wife until now, he really wanted to fly to the Holy Church of Abysmal to save his wife. However, he knew that it was impossible. They could only pin all their hopes on Yi Shiwen. He had been traveling all over the years and had experienced many difficulties. He was used to solving all problems by himself. However, this was the only problem that he couldn't solve. Yi Shiwen looked at the middle-aged Emperor Lord and said, I don't think you dare. I will give face to Holy Senior Abysmal. I won't pursue the previous matters, and I won't break your rules. However, Sun Zhuang is my disciple, and I can't hand her over to you. Sun Diandian is my disciple, and I can't hand her over to you. If you still have any objections, let Holy Senior Abysmal come and talk to me personally. No. The middle-aged Emperor Lord didn't dare to say anything else. Wouldn't it be asking for a scolding if he alarmed Holy Senior Abysmal for such a matter? Even if the emperors of the Holy Abysmal Church held a meeting to discuss, they could only agree to this matter. Compared to the consequences of facing Yi Shiwen's anger, marrying Fairy Tian Miao was nothing. Moreover, there was already a core force in the Holy Abysmal Church that was protecting Fairy Tian Miao. This matter was just pushing the boat along with the current. I don't want to force you. I know that your Holy Abysmal Church is also furious about this matter. Although I won't allow you to kill him, I won't interfere in other matters. I don't care what kind of test you want to set. If he passes, let him take Fairy Tian Miao away. If he doesn't pass, I won't care. What do you think? Yi Shiwen glanced at the middle-aged Emperor Lord and said, The middle-aged Emperor Lord looked at Yi Shiwen in astonishment. He didn't expect that Yi Shiwen would say such a thing and not take Fairy Tian Miao away. One should know that even if Yi Shiwen took Fairy Tian Miao away, they wouldn't say a word. Even Holy Senior Abysmal wouldn't fall out with Yi Shiwen for an insignificant disciple. That wouldn't be worthwhile. The face of a Holy Senior wasn't that cheap. They had to give Yi Shiwen some face. However, who knew that Yi Shiwen didn't intend to take Fairy Tian Miao away? What was he doing? Why? Do you have a problem with that? Yi Shiwen said expressionlessly. No, the middle-aged Emperor Lord said quickly. He was not stupid. The reason why Yi Shiwen didn't take Fairy Tian Miao away was not because he didn't have the ability. On one hand, he was giving Holy Senior abysmal church face. On the other hand, he wanted them to become Sun Tzu Wang's whetstone. To become Sun Tzu Wang's whetstone. He was also a sovereign emperor. He naturally understood that no one could become a sovereign emperor smoothly for an extreme powerhouse. They would inevitably have to go through hardships. Even Yi Shiwen's personal disciple, Bian Xiaoye, had to travel all over the eastern region before she became a sovereign emperor. She experienced many bitter battles and accumulated enough experience before she could cultivate to the sovereign emperor realm. However, he never thought that one day he would become someone else's whetstone. With Holy Master Yi Shiwen behind them, could they kill Fairy Tian Miao? Obviously, it was impossible. Therefore, this so-called test could only be a test. It was impossible for Yi Shiwen to kill Sun Zonwang. However, he couldn't let Sun Zonwang pass easily either. Otherwise, it would be contrary to Yi Shiwen's intention, and he would inevitably have to bear Yi Shiwen's anger. He understood this in an instant. He didn't get angry. Instead, he felt glad and envious. He was glad that he had courted death on Yi Shiwen's head. In the end, nothing happened, and he could retreat unscathed. From this point of view, Yi Shiwen didn't seem to be as murderous as the rumors said. At the same time, he was also very envious of Sun Ziwang. Although it could be said that Sun Ziwang had gone through many hardships and had been chased by him for so many years, having such an emperor master was a great advantage. Those who wanted to do something to him would have to show mercy even if they didn't give him face. Moreover, Yi Shiwen had schemed for him. It was like he had saved the world in his previous life. Although he held a high position in Holy Abysmal Church, he didn't have much interaction with Abysmal Saint Venerable. In name, everyone in Holy Abysmal Church was Abysmal Saint Venerable's disciple. However, in actual fact, only a few lineal disciples had the honor of being taught by Abysmal Saint Venerable personally. Sun Ziwang was nothing to him now. However, with the help of such a holy master, his future was limitless. For example, that personal disciple of Yi Shiwen, Bian Xiaoye. Everyone knew that she was just a mortal who hadn't cultivated in the slightest over 10,000 years ago. Yet she'd attained the Tao in a short period of time and displayed an extraordinary performance on the battlefield of the epics. So, Sun Ziwang's future prospects could be deduced from this. Everything will be done according to his honor's instructions. The middle-aged emperor said quickly. Then go. Help me send my regards to Abyss Saint Master. Yi Shiwen waved his hand and said. The middle-aged emperor immediately escaped from Yi Shiwen's side as if he had been granted amnesty. He didn't care about his appearance at all. For him, it was like he had walked through the gates of hell. The feeling of escaping death made him have no time to pay attention to these trivial matters. After the middle-aged emperor left, Sun Diandian jumped out from behind Yi Shiwen and exclaimed, Master, you are so powerful. That bad guy was scared when he saw you. You are so powerful. Seeing the middle-aged emperor's appearance, Sun Diandian's depression for many years was gone. She actually had a little girl's attitude and was innocent. Over the years, Sun Diandian was forced to mature early since she was very young. She had no experience of being a young girl. Now that the big stone in her heart had been removed, she seemed to have recovered a little girl's appearance. Until Sun Ziwang glared at her, she realized that she seemed to have crossed the line. However, Yi Shiwen didn't care. Sun Diandian's lively and cheerful appearance reminded him of Little Crescent Moon. He felt a little guilty in his heart. He couldn't accompany Little Crescent Moon when she was growing up. He missed the most important period of being a father. What are you staring at? It's all because of you, the father. Yi Shiwen glanced at Sun Ziwang and said, Thank you, Master, for considering for me. Sun Ziwang smiled embarrassedly, then knelt down and kowtowed. If the middle-aged emperor could understand the matter just now, Sun Ziwang naturally also understood that this was a test left by Yi Shiwen for him. Get up. This test is very difficult for you. I told him not to hold back. You will die if you can't pass. Yi Shiwen said, Next, you will return to Mount Buzhou with me. You can leave when you cultivate to the emperor realm. Dian can also study in the divine court. I will let Xiao Yu take her to cultivate. It happens that both of them are women, so it will be more convenient. Thank you, Master, for being so considerate for us. Sun Ziwang and Sun Dian quickly bowed and thanked. Thank you, Master. Yi Shiwen nodded and said, Okay, get up. Let's go back to Mount Buzhou. After saying that, Yi Shiwen waved his hand. The three of them turned into a stream of light and flew towards Mount Buzhou. Chapter 36:10. With Yi Shiwen's speed, it would not take long to return to Mount Buzhou. After returning to Mount Buzhou, Yi Shiwen called Bian Xiaoye and introduced Sun Ziwang to her. Although Sun Ziwang had been in contact with Yi Shiwen earlier, Sun Ziwang could only be regarded as Yi Shiwen's disciple and student. He was not a disciple in the true sense. Sun Ziwang also cultivated the Demon King's inheritance that Yi Shiwen obtained. Although Bian Xiaoye also cultivated the demonic arts, it was the improved version by Yi Shiwen. It could be regarded as Yi Shiwen's inheritance. So there was a difference between the two. Bian Xiaoye was Yi Shiwen's successor, and Sun Ziwang was just one of Yi Shiwen's disciples. However, on Yi Shiwen's side, although there was a difference between the two, the difference was not big. It was impossible for any sect or any strong clan to have only one kind of inheritance. Bian Xiaoye and Yi Shiwen's cultivation was not the same, and they also walked different paths. One could practice step by step below the emperor level, but it was the same for everyone if they wanted to become an emperor level expert. They must walk their own path in order to become an extreme powerhouse. What was an extreme powerhouse? It was to reach the pinnacle of the Great Way in a certain aspect, to reach a realm that no one had ever reached before. Otherwise, one could not become an emperor-level powerhouse. To become an emperor-level powerhouse, the final path would be different from Yi Shiwen's, so there was no difference for him. Between the two, Bian Xiaoye was also the senior sister. Although Sun Ziwang was older on the path of cultivation, it had always been the winner. It had nothing to do with age. In terms of age, Yi Shiwen was much older than many celestial masters, and even many emperor-level powerhouses were much older than him. But this was meaningless in the face of absolute strength. After introducing Sun Ziwang and Sun Dian to Bian Xiaoye, Yi Shiwen did not bother with them anymore. He entered into a state of retreat because he knew that Bian Xiaoye would handle things well. He had to make final preparations for the Eastern Heavenly Venerate contest 10 years later because he knew that there was not much time left. In order to compete for the Eastern Heavenly Venerate, he had prepared for many years. Success or failure would be in 10 years' time. He did not allow himself to fail. At this time, if he could increase his strength, he would naturally increase it. Not long after Yi Shiwen went into closed-door cultivation, the Fortune God dynasty announced to the public that the Eastern region's Eastern Heavenly Venerate selection would be held in the Eastern Heavenly Venerate residence after 10 years. Once this news was announced, it immediately attracted the attention of the entire world. Many people secretly sighed, knowing that this day had finally arrived. Ever since the East Empyrean had successfully risen to become a Middle Empyrean, the position of East Empyrean had been empty. Since then, the affairs of the East Empyrean had always been handled by the Middle Empyrean. However, this situation couldn't last long. A new East Empyrean would inevitably be elected. Back when the position of East Celestial Sovereign had just been vacated, there had been many people whose names had been flourishing. Their appeal had been extremely high, and there would often be a super sect or a super clan waving the flag and shouting for them. Many of them were old monsters who had made a name for themselves many years ago. Some of them had even followed the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch to conquer the outer heavenly realms and establish the Fortune Divine Dynasty. Every one of these people had an everlasting reputation, and the amount of achievements they had made in the Fortune Divine Dynasty was unimaginable. Moreover, their strength was also very strong. Therefore, in many people's opinion, the battle for the Eastern Heavenly Venerate would be decided among these old monsters. Among the latecomers, the only one who could be compared to these old monsters was Spacetime Heavenly Venerate. He had ruled the Central Region for many years. His prestige was extremely high, and he had many supporters. The tribes that supported him were all over the Fortune God dynasty. As long as he gave the order, countless tribes would beat the drums and march, gathering an army of billions. This was the power of space-time heavenly venerate. However, no one had expected that a foreign invasion would directly change the situation. During the Fortune God dynasty's expedition to the ancient era, foreign armies invaded the Fortune God dynasty. In this war that nearly destroyed the Fortune God dynasty, these old monsters, due to various reasons, remained neutral and did not participate in the war. This made them, who were originally highly regarded by the public, completely disappointed. Moreover, when the Fortune God dynasty's great heavenly venerates returned, they expressed great anger. Whether it was the disappointment of the common people or the anger of the Fortune God dynasty's higher-ups, all of them had completely lost the possibility of becoming the East heavenly venerate. Whether it was the great heavenly venerates, all of them were highly regarded by the public. It wasn't that becoming the East heavenly venerate was the only way to become strong and have high prestige. Only those who were strong and had high prestige were qualified to become the East heavenly venerate. In this way, most of the candidates were directly filtered out, and there weren't many people left. Among the remaining candidates, Spacetime Heavenly Venerate was highly regarded by the public and could compete with those veteran Heavenly Venerates. In addition, he was strong and experienced, so he could be said to be the first choice. There wasn't even a single competitor. However, it was under such circumstances that a person appeared like a shining comet. This person was Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's sudden appearance immediately shattered everyone's expectations of the East Heavenly Venerate candidate. His qualifications were not deep, but this was nothing in front of his shocking battle record. He had destroyed an era, killed many ancient Heavenly Venerates, and exposed the Devil Path era's conspiracy to destroy the Fortune God dynasty's army. After returning from the era battlefield, he had killed many Stormy Sea region Heavenly Venerates, including the Fortune God Heavenly Monarch's eternal rival, the Primal Chaos Overlord. Moreover, he had defeated the Stormy Sea region's army with his own strength. If someone had accomplished any of these, it would have been enough to become the focus of the Fortune God dynasty's training and become a great hero respected by the masses. However, when all of these were concentrated on one person, it was enough to make his prestige and achievement stand out, to the point where he could compete with Spacetime Heavenly Venerate. In the face of the powerful achievements and strength of these two people, the other competitors simply weren't on the same level. Therefore, besides those veteran Heavenly Venerates, other Heavenly Venerates who had originally intended to compete for the East Heavenly Venerate position also tactfully gave up. If they still stood up to compete at this time, they would only be humiliating themselves. There was no other use. Therefore, after many rounds of elimination, only two people were left to compete for the East Heavenly Venerate position: Spacetime Heavenly Venerate and Martial Venerate Yi Shiwen. Both of them had extremely large supporters. Spacetime Heavenly Venerate had ruled the vast eastern region for countless years and had many supporters. Yi Shiwen had saved the eastern region in this war and defeated the Stormy Sea region with his own strength. Because of this, he had gained the support of the entire eastern region. No matter who it was, no matter what kind of opinion they had towards Yi Shiwen, they had to admit that they owed Yi Shiwen a huge favor. In particular, those big clans and sects that were facing the front lines could be destroyed at any moment. However, because Yi Shiwen had stood up and organized the allied forces to defeat the foreign allied forces, they had preserved their orthodoxies and not perished. Between these two people, who would become the East Heavenly Venerate? This had undoubtedly become the object of many people's speculation. Both of them had many supporters between them. From all aspects, it was hard to tell who was better. However, soon, one view became the mainstream. Because in other aspects, it was hard to tell who was better. In the end, the winner would still be decided by a battle. Since both sides were about the same, of course, the stronger one would be able to obtain the East Heavenly Venerate position. On this issue, more people were inclined towards space-time heavenly venerate. After all, space-time heavenly venerate had ruled the central region for countless years. During this period, he had repeatedly punished the middle heavenly venerates who rebelled. He had also fought with the foreign heavenly venerates many times. His tyrannical strength had long established his supreme prestige. No one dared to underestimate him. However, compared to him, Yi Shiwen's strength was undoubtedly weaker. It was not that Yi Shiwen's potential and talent were not good. It was just that no matter how good his talent and potential were, he needed time to display them. Yi Shiwen, who had only achieved the Tao for more than 10,000 years, was at a huge disadvantage in this aspect. 10,000 years was countless lifetimes for mortals. However, for a heavenly venerate, it was only equivalent to 1 or 2 years for mortals. What did it count for? Therefore, many people were not optimistic about Yi Shiwen. Although Yi Shiwen had a secret method that could enhance his strength to the extreme, many people thought that this method should be a one-time use. He did not have the ability to do it again. This trump card was already beyond everyone's imagination. It could enhance Yi Shiwen's strength to such an extent. Moreover, this trump card also had great limitations and sequelae. Didn't they see that Yi Shiwen was almost unable to hold on? If not for the protection of Xianyuan Heavenly Venerate, Yi Shiwen would have been killed long ago. It was conceivable that this method should have great limitations. There was no possibility of it being used again. Under such circumstances, Yi Shiwen really did not have any advantage against space-time Heavenly Venerate, who had achieved the Tao for countless years. No matter how one looked at it, he was at a disadvantage. On the surface, this statement did not seem to have any logical errors. Therefore, it quickly spread throughout the Fortune God dynasty. Many people also believed this point and could not help but feel that it was a pity. Yi Shiwen's time to achieve the Tao was too short. If he was given more time, his future achievements would be simply unimaginable. He might even have the possibility of competing for the position of Eastern Heavenly Venerate. There would be a day when he would shine until he was unparalleled in the world. But now was not the time. This was also the opinion of the majority. Even Yi Shiwen's supporters were powerless to refute this statement. After all, the disparity between the two was well known to everyone. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.